Chapter 1. Beep beep beep. The military pager fell to the ground and the director of SIL stared blankly at his rapidly disintegrating body. After saying, "What the hell?" he turned into ashes and dissipated in the wind of the streets of New York. Finally, a mark suspected to be Captain Marvel appeared on the screen of the pager. This is the movie Easter egg of The Avengers 3. The movie was played here in the cinema screening room, and the names of the behind-the-scenes personnel began to appear from bottom to top, indicating the end of the movie. That's it? Thanos hasn't been killed yet. Many of the audience bickered, picked up their belongings and left the screening room one after another. Lu Ming, a high school student, sat in the best seat of the movie. He held the popcorn tube, and his whole person was still immersed in the Marvel story. It's worthy of using more than a dozen Marvel independent films as a foreshadowing. Doctor Strange, who saw millions of endings in the future, was finally tricked by Star-Lord. Captain America's Iron Man is still okay, and his combat performance in both places of the universe is at the upper level. Thanos is really the last boss of the first stage of Marvel, killing half of the life in the universe with a snap of his fingers. Spider-Man has just returned. Black Panther is popular. More than half of the superheroes died like this. Can they be resurrected? It's a pity that Avengers 4 will have to wait until next year. Lu Ming shook his head regretfully. For a serious Marvel fan like him, waiting for a year is really torturous. Torturous? Let's watch it again. Lu Ming stood up from his seat, and just as the curtain of the movie ended in front of him, the names of the production staff were pulled over, and a paragraph of text jumped up from the bottom. You want to enter the world of Marvel? Seeing the text that inexplicably appeared on the screen, Lu Ming was stunned. He didn't know if it was because of the 3D special effects, but the text seemed to be detached from the screen and suspended in front of his eyes. What the hell is this? The second Easter egg? Lu Ming looked around suspiciously. The audience had left just now, and he was the only one left in the large theater. Looking at the screen again, the text was still suspended in the center, and the color of the text began to fade from black to white, and it was about to disappear completely. I don't believe that you can really send me to Marvel. Lu Ming chuckled and stretched out his finger to click on the option. However, just as he raised his index finger, a tingling sensation of electric shock spread from his fingertip to his entire body. Bastard, is this even compulsory? Before Lu Ming could complain, his vision turned black and he fainted. After being unconscious for an unknown period of time, Lu Ming woke up in a daze. He sat up from the single bed and found himself in a large wooden room. There were vintage lights hanging above his head, and there were many similar military beds around the bed. Where am I? Lu Ming was shocked. He rubbed his eyes suspiciously and quickly confirmed with his eyes again. That was right. He was in a military camp. To be more precise, it was a European military camp in the Middle Ages. It can't be right? I really King transmigrated? Marvel's world? Lu Ming couldn't figure it out for a while. Suddenly waking up in an unfamiliar military camp, he urgently needed to verify his thoughts. He immediately unzipped his pants, lowered his head to check, and was the first to breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, his brother was still here. Not only was it still here, but it had also grown in size. It seems that I didn't transmigrate but was reborn. Although Lu Ming couldn't see his current face, he could still judge from his white skin and other conditions that he was reborn in the body of a foreign young man who was about the same age as his previous life. Perhaps it was because he had read more novels in his previous life, but Lu Ming naturally accepted the fact that he was reborn. Since he was here, he should take things as they came. If he made a fuss or couldn't accept anything, he would be digging his own grave. More importantly, since he was one of the reborn people and he was suspected to be in a world like Marvel where the death rate of ordinary people was very high, he must have a cheat on him. Lu Ming thought of this and was about to search for a built-in system or something. At this moment, the door of the room suddenly opened, and a skinny blonde young man with blue eyes walked in. Seeing that Lu Ming had woken up, the young man was slightly stunned, but then he quickly walked forward excitedly. Lu Ming also reacted quickly, knowing that the person in front of him was most likely a friend of the original owner of his reborn body. If he could hide it from him, he could get information about the identity of the original owner of his body, as well as information about the current environment and the current situation of this world. Adapting to the reborn body and integrating with the environment, this was the first stage of a reborn person. The corner of Lu Ming's mouth curled up, making sure to show a friendly smile. However, the first sentence that the young man said made his smile freeze on his face. "Kyler will right?" the young man asked. It was in authentic English. Lu Ming looked at the young man with a concerned expression, and the smile from before disappeared. His lips were tightly shut, and he couldn't help but want to curse in his heart. Bastard. Didn't they say that the entire universe spoke Chinese? Novels and comics were all lies, right? He was only a high school student in his previous life. No matter how good his English was, it was impossible for him to communicate with foreigners verbally in English. Not to mention the fact that he might expose himself if he spoke in poor English, he couldn't understand what the other party was saying at all. Seeing that Lu Ming's face had turned pale, the young man's worry increased, and he mumbled a series of greetings in English. Lu Ming squeezed out an ugly smile, his clenched fists were full of cold sweat. He never thought that a language barrier would cause such a predicament. Just as he was about to give it his all and answer randomly, a few translucent white cards jumped out from the back of the young man's head, floating and spinning with the young man's body as the center. The young man didn't seem to notice the cards around him, he was still worriedly asking about something. For white cards? As if he had met his savior, Lu Ming's attention immediately shifted to the cards on the young man's body. American soldier training uniform set, bicycle driving, street fighting techniques, basic English proficiency. Other than the first card that was labeled as an item card, it was not available for drawing. As for the other 3 ability cards, they were all in a state where they could be drawn. Without thinking, Lu Ming ignored the rest of the cards and focused on the last, basic English proficiency, ability card. Basic English proficiency. Can grasp the common spoken and written English skills. White ability card. Current status. Available for drawing. Chapter 2. Cards of abilities and items can be drawn? Is this my golden finger as a reborn person? Lu Ming did not delve into it and immediately drew the basic English proficiency card from the young man. In fact, it was just a thought. After 3 seconds of drawing time, the young man beside the bed said, "Are you really okay? You look terrible. Do you want to go to the military doctor again?" "I'm fine. I just haven't woken up yet." Lu Ming tried to reply. English was like his mother tongue and he even spoke with a local accent. "It's good that you're okay." The young man breathed a sigh of relief and handed over the cup of water and medicine in his hand. He smiled and said, "Take the medicine first." Lu Ming nodded and swallowed the pills. After drinking a few mouthfuls of water, he breathed a sigh of relief. "Phew, I feel alive. By the way, my head is still a little dizzy. I want to confirm with you, who am I, where am I?" Looking at Lu Ming's serious expression, the young man was stunned for a moment, but he quickly took it as a joke and scolded, "Kyle, are you dizzy from the fall? This is the U.S. military's training base." Kale Military Training Base? Lu Ming pondered and knew that the original name was Kale. He also tacitly accepted Kale as his new name. From now on there was no Lu Ming, only Kale. The young man continued, "Yes, the training base. As recruits, we've only been here for a day. Maybe the weather is too hot and you fainted from heatstroke during the high-intensity running training." Heatstroke? It seemed that the original body's physique was not very good. Kale seemed to suddenly think of something. He quickly put his hands on the young man's thin shoulders and asked hurriedly, "By the way, let me ask you another question. Do you know Captain America, Hulk, and Iron Man? This is very important. Tell me quickly." "Kale, don't shake me so hard." The young man rolled his eyes. His malnourished thin body was almost falling apart. When Kale stopped, he replied slowly, "I really don't know those people you're talking about." "Captain America? Which officer is it?" "You don't know him?" Kale furrowed his eyebrows. Soon he seemed to have thought of something and asked hesitantly, "Wait, what time is it now?" "I mean the era." "Kale, you didn't really hit your head, did you?" The young man asked in astonishment. "Tell me quickly." "It's February 1943. 1943 is actually the Second World War." Kale suddenly realized that even in the world of Marvel, there was no such thing as the Avengers during World War II. "No, there is one." "Last question." Kale took a deep breath and asked, "Is there someone called Steve in the training camp here?" "Steve?" The young man's expression became strange. "Yes, Steve Rogers." Kale confirmed that the Avengers were the first heroes to appear in Marvel during World War II. Captain America, he should also be the first superhero in Marvel. "Kale, what are you talking about?" "That person you and I don't know." The young man blinked. Under Kale's puzzled gaze, he pointed to himself and said with a smile, "I am Steve Rogers." "Well, you're Steve." "What, you're Steve?" Kale opened his eyes wide and looked at the young man in front of him from head to toe. For example, the normal young man is thin and petite, with simple blonde hair, and a seemingly weak but righteous face. Well, no wonder he feels a little familiar. Isn't this Captain America before he was injected with the super soldier potion? Since he is here, this is really the world of Marvel. Cale didn't know whether he was happy or afraid. He was very excited when he thought that he could come into contact with the black technology of the superhero living in the movie. But when he thought of the powerful villains in the world of Marvel, he had a headache. But this is Marvel during World War II. It's hard to say whether he has the life to live to the 21st century. It's too early to worry about Thanos. But Captain America himself is next to me. This is a thick thigh. Cale thought about it, and the way he looked at Steve changed. This made Steve shudder and subconsciously step back. Right. Steve seemed to think of something important and said worriedly, "Officer Brandt asked me to inform you that when you wake up, you should go to see him." "Oh, the officer who trains the recruits?" Cale nodded. After seeing Captain America, he still had a little impression of the role of the training officer. He remembered that before Steve became Captain America, he was targeted by the officer and his comrades because of his thin body. Maybe it was the original owner of this body who caused him trouble. As a recruit, he fainted from heat stroke on the first day of training, which probably gave the officer a very bad impression. Cale smiled and said calmly, "I don't remember how to get to the officer's office. Take me there." "Okay, come with me." Steve nodded. Steve took Cale out of the barracks dormitory. The sun was glaring outside the door. On the training ground of the huge base, a team of young soldiers wearing white shorts and bare arms were running under the slogan. Look, isn't that Cale and Steve? Heat stroke on the first day of training, what a pretty boy. A pretty boy, a thin boy, these two are really a match. A team of recruits whistled and ran past the two. Apparently they were training teammates who lived in the same dormitory. "Cale, you don't have to pay attention to them." Steve turned back to comfort him, but he saw that Cale's face didn't have the slightest bit of resentment. Instead there was a faint smile. Cale of course didn't pay attention to those recruits. For him, who had his own card draw cheat, only Steve, who would soon become Captain America, was qualified to be his comrade. On the way to the officer's office, Cale was constantly testing his card ability. First of all, as long as the person was within 3 meters of him, he could obtain the card information of the person. The classification was currently simply divided into item cards and ability cards. Item cards couldn't be drawn, but ability cards could be drawn freely. Ability cards were a person's skills and abilities. Commonly used skills such as English Foundation, car driving, and other ability cards were all white cards. Reaching a certain level of professional proficiency such as English proficiency, pistol proficiency, would become green cards. Green ability cards can also be drawn, but the drawing time. Cale was still exploring the card ability when Steve suddenly patted him on the shoulder and led him to a room. "Report. Soldier Steve, I've brought Cale here." Report. Soldier Cale." Cale followed Steve. The two stood at the door of the office and gave a standard military salute. "Come in." With a dignified and calm voice, the two walked side by side into the office. The inside was also simple and clean in the style of the military camp. There was an office desk in the middle of the room. A middle-aged man in a military uniform was sitting on the office chair. It seemed to be Officer Brandt. In addition, there was a female agent in a military uniform standing next to the desk, holding a document. "Soldier, how's your body?" Officer Brandt looked coldly at Cale. Cale immediately replied, "Sir, my body has recovered. I can immediately continue training." Officer Brandt frowned and said calmly, "There's no need for training. You can go back and pack your things. Someone will take you home tomorrow morning." Steve's face changed slightly. This sentence was undoubtedly a death sentence for Cale's career as a soldier. The female agent didn't say a word. She lowered her head and recorded something in the document. Only the person involved, Cale, was calm as if it wasn't him. He said calmly, "Sir, I insist on staying and continuing training as a soldier." Officer Brandt snorted coldly. "Training? What training? You fainted from heat stroke on the first day. Your willpower is also terrible. You're a disgrace to the U.S. military. Tell me, what qualifications and abilities do you have to be a soldier protecting the country?" Speaking of this, Officer Brandt's eyes swept over Steve. He was obviously scolding him as well. Faced with the questioning, Cale took a deep breath, took a step forward and answered confidently, "Give me a chance. I'll show you my abilities and qualifications." With this one step, Cale stepped within 3 meters of Officer Brandt. Focusing his mind, more than 30 cards of varying colors of white and green appeared in his field of vision. Good Lord, as expected of the recruit training officer. There were 9 green cards alone. Pistol proficiency, rifle proficiency, military auxiliary equipment proficiency, military boxing proficiency, soldier instructor training, you talk big. Tell me, how do you want to show off? Officer Brandt snorted. If someone with talent said this, it could be understood as confidence. If someone without talent said this, it was arrogance. What kind of talent did a recruit who fainted from heatstroke on the first day of training have? The female agent beside the desk also secretly shook her head. Her impression of Kale was worsening. Although the soldier in front of her could be ranked in the top 3 of the entire training camp in terms of looks, his willpower and self-awareness were not even comparable to Steve's. If you don't believe me, officer, do you want to make a bet with me, a soldier? After Kale saw Officer Brandt's cards, he felt more confident. He calmly said, if I win, then I'll continue to stay in the military camp. If I lose, then you can expel me from the military. Bet? You don't want to play cards or toss a coin or something, do you? Officer Brandt looked at him like he was an idiot. Of course not. I want to compete with Officer Brandt. A soldier needs talent. Kale said. Enough. Soldier, don't be too presumptuous. Officer Brandt slammed the table and stood up. He said a little angrily, you're humiliating an officer. I can totally file a complaint against you to the military court. Not only was Kale not afraid, but he said seriously, of course I don't mean to humiliate you. I'm serious. I want to show my talent as a soldier. Officer Brandt was about to say something when the female agent beside him interrupted and asked, Soldier Kale, how do you want to compete with Officer Brandt? Just marksmanship. Any kind of gun is fine, Kale answered firmly. The female agent looked at Kale with her beautiful eyes, as if she wanted to find something on his face. Finally she said, I think we can give him a chance. She returned to her original silence. You want to compete with me in marksmanship? I don't know if you're too confident or if you've given up. Officer Brandt was silent for a moment. He sat back down in his chair and said, then I'll let you go home convinced. 5 o'clock in the afternoon at the shooting range. Let's compete on the 50-meter target with a rifle. Okay. Kale nodded. Everything was within his expectations. His attention was now on the female agent. To be able to interrupt the officer, this female agent seemed to have a powerful background. He wanted to see if she had any ability cards that could be used later. Kale did what he wanted to do. His mind fell on the female agent. The next moment he was almost stunned. More than 70 ability cards appeared on the female agent's body. The white and green cards intersected, almost covering her entire slender body. Psychology expert, medical expert, Morse code expert, assassination expert, rifle expert, etiquette expert. Just the green ability cards alone were no less than 20. And among them, there was a card that was even greener than a normal green card. It was dazzling. Since this is a bet, can we let this agent be a witness? It's best if there's a paper certificate. Kale suggested with a smile. Of course, he was not trying to strike up a conversation at this juncture. It took more than 3 minutes to draw a green ability card, and the drawing distance had to be within 1 meter. Chapter 3. On his first day in the camp, a recruit challenged his commanding officer's marksmanship. This piece of news was like throwing a grenade into a pool of water. It shook the entire training base. Moreover, the recruit fainted from heatstroke while running, while the commanding officer was a professional training officer at the rank of captain. This contrast caused an earthquake in the base. Whether it was the soldiers or the other officers, they were all stunned when they heard about the bet. They couldn't help but feel sorry for the recruit. He could have offended anyone, but he chose to offend Commanding Officer Brandt. I heard that the commanding officer once placed in the top 3 in a military shooting competition. Is the recruit crazy? He gave up on himself. He's going to lose face. No matter what, this was something that the busybodies liked to see. Before 5 o'clock, almost everyone in the training base went to the shooting range, hoping to see the embarrassing performance of the soldier named Kale. Kale, you're too impulsive. Steve sighed. You don't even use a gun. How can your marksmanship compare to a commanding officer who has been in the army for a long time? If you go back and apologize to Commanding Officer Brandt now, maybe you can. Don't worry. After this bet, no one here will look down on us. Kale was calm and didn't show the slightest hint of nervousness, because he had already drawn the card that would allow him to win this competition. At the shooting range of the training base, the spectator stand of the shooting range was already packed with soldiers in military green uniforms and iron helmets. Many officers in military uniforms were also there to watch the show. Commanding Officer Brandt was already in position to test the gun. The female agent was still holding the file by the side. After seeing Steve bring Cale in, Commanding Officer Brandt waved his arm at the various military weapons on the table. There are all the rifles of the U.S. military here. You can pick one. Cale nodded but didn't walk to the table. Instead, he approached the female agent and said with a smile, "Agent Carter, what gun do you use? Can I borrow it for the competition?" Agent Carter raised her head. Under the sunlight, her exquisite and beautiful face and red lips exuded a charming aura. Cale only learned the name of the female agent in front of him from Steve after he left the officer's office, Carter. She was even more beautiful than in the movies. "Of course. But are you sure you want to use it in the competition?" Carter said coldly as she took out the gun she carried with her. It was an exquisite pistol. "Soldier Cale, are you joking? You want to use a pistol to compete with my rifle?" Officer Brandt's face was filled with anger. Even if it was only a 50-meter target, how could a pistol compare with a rifle? "Just lend it to me." Cale took the pistol from Carter's hands. The exquisite pistol seemed to be tailor-made for a woman, but the gun body shone with a cold light under the sun. There was no doubt that it was a hot weapon that could kill. "Good gun," Cale praised and began to swing the pistol in his hand. 3 shots to decide the winner. "There's no need to waste the National Army's bullets on you," Officer Brandt said as he pulled the safety off his rifle and walked up to the shooting range. 3 shots it is. "Sir, then please shoot first," Kyle said with a smile and even made a gentlemanly gesture for him to shoot first. "Young man living in a greenhouse, I'll show you what marksmanship is." Officer Brandt moved quickly and quickly held the gun. After a few seconds of aiming, he fired 3 shots at the target 50 meters away. After shooting, he stood up with satisfaction. Shooting a 50-meter target with a rifle was the basics. With more than 20 years of shooting experience in the Army, it was not difficult at all. Soon, the trainer reported the results of the recoil target. Officer Brandt. 50-meter target, 2 shots in the bullseye, 1 in the bullseye, a total of 29 points. 29 points, almost full marks. The surrounding soldiers on the shooting range exclaimed. Officer Brandt was satisfied, but his expression remained serious. He shook his head and said, "I'm not in good condition. Otherwise, 30 points would be easy." As expected of an expert in rifles. Cale shrugged and walked to the shooting range. He lived in a peaceful era in his previous life. Not to mention practicing with a pistol, he had never even touched one. But now that he had a card related to pistol mastery, an unprecedented sense of familiarity arose spontaneously with the pistol in his hand. Looking at the target in the distance, Cale's movements were not smooth, but he still raised his arm. In less than half a second he took aim and fired. Again it was 3 shots in a row. "You're quite good at pretending." Officer Brandt shook his head. A 50-meter target was already a long-range target for a pistol. It was more difficult to hit than a rifle. If he wanted to win, he had to hit the bullseye with all 3 shots. The probability of this was close to 0 for a rookie. Sure enough, the trainer checked the 50-meter target for a long time before he reported loudly, "Soldier Kyle, you're right. 50-meter target, all 3 shots missed. Score 0. The shooting range was silent, and then the audience roared with laughter. Officer Brandt was also stunned. He thought that Cale was full of confidence. Even if he couldn't beat him, he would at least hit the target. He didn't expect that all 3 shots would miss. A farce, a farce. "Cale, hurry up and pack your things and get the hell out of here." Officer Brandt shook his head mockingly, but Cale, who was still standing on the shooting range, suddenly shouted, "Trainer, please check the 100-meter target." "A 100-meter target? What else do you want to do? Haven't you made enough jokes?" Officer Brandt finally couldn't take it anymore. He stepped forward with a rifle in hand, and his face turned ashen with anger. He pointed the muzzle directly at Cale's head. "Believe it or not, I'll shoot you." Cale said calmly, "Before you shoot me, can you wait for the trainer to report the results of the 100-meter target?" "Are you crazy? Do you really want me to shoot you?" Officer Brandt's finger was on the trigger. At that moment, the trainer's hurried report came from 100 meters away. "Report, report, Soldier Cale, all 3 shots hit the bullseye of a 100-meter target. Score 30 points. All 3 shots hit the 100-meter target." The shooting range, which had been full of laughter, fell silent again. The soldiers and even the officers outside the shooting range were stunned. Officer Brandt showed an expression of disbelief and asked the trainer again. After the trainer confirmed that there was no mistake, he put down the rifle in his hand. "If that's the case, then I've won the bet. Sir, I'll continue to stay at the base for training." Cale also secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The feeling of having a gun pointed at his head was no joke. However, the result was that he won. It was scary but not dangerous. That was enough. Without waiting for Officer Brandt's response, Cale left the shooting range and walked to Agent Carter, handing the pistol back to her. Carter looked at him in surprise and exclaimed, "I didn't expect you to be able to do this with a pistol. You can do the same, right?" Cale replied with a smile. "How did you know?" Carter couldn't help but ask. "I guessed. But today you're my goddess of victory. Next time I'll definitely thank you properly." After Cale finished speaking, he turned and left the shooting range, leaving behind a confused Carter and an absent-minded Officer Brandt. Outside the shooting range, Steve saw Cale come out and ran over to give him a hug. "Cale, you scared me. Please don't be so gay. I'm straight." Although Cale said that, he still put his hand on Steve's thin shoulder after the hug. "I didn't expect you to be so good at shooting. Teach me properly in the future," Steve said happily. "Of course we're friends. Let's go eat." The two of them walked to the cafeteria with their arms around each other's shoulders and watched them leave. It wasn't clear who took the lead, but soon there was a thunderous applause. The rookies who had been ridiculing him also lowered their heads in shame. A 100-meter pistol target versus a 50-meter rifle target, a complete victory. Such a sharpshooter's shooting ability deserved applause and respect from everyone in the barracks. The food in the army is nutritious, but the taste is still not that good. After eating, Cale returned to the barracks dormitory to rest. After this amazing gamble, the attitude of the rookies in the same dormitory had a 180-degree change. In Steve's words, those who had ignored them in the past were now begging to be friends with them. Those who had bullied them in the past were now behaving themselves with their tails between their legs. That was the deterrence of strength and talent. After enjoying the convenience and benefits of drawing cards, Cale fell even more in love with the feeling of constantly enriching himself and strengthening himself. There were close to 20 people in the dormitory. He was like a dry sponge, constantly drawing the abilities of the cards around him. He didn't reject any of them. But these soldiers were all young rookies. Even if they had cards, most of them were limited to white cards. There were very few green cards. And among the green cards, there were very few that had any practical value. Agent Carter was still the best. There were more than 20 green cards. When would he draw all of them? After collecting, Cale leaned on the bed and was thinking. Steve suddenly leaned on the bed and asked curiously, "Cale, what are you thinking about?" Cale, who was still daydreaming, blurted out, "I'm thinking about Agent Carter." Agent Carter." Steve's face froze when he heard the name. "You like Agent Carter, don't you?" Cale chuckled and comforted him, "Don't worry, I won't steal the woman you like." "You really are." Steve's face was touched, but it quickly turned to disappointment. "I'll pass. I don't deserve a woman like her." "Don't underestimate yourself, Steve. You have to believe in your talent and future." Cale patted Steve's shoulder and encouraged him, "If you want to pursue that woman, keep your will and drive. Dig out your potential. I don't want you to be by my side on the battlefield in the future. After all, you are Captain America. In Marvel's World War II era, you are the main character." "Thank you, Cale." Steve nodded hard and got off the bed. "You just have to work hard and become stronger. Although I, with the ability to draw cards, will always be ahead of you." Cale looked at Steve's figure as his thoughts returned to the ability cards he had collected. Putting aside the hundreds of white ability cards in various fields, he only had 5 green ability cards in his possession. Rifle proficiency, English proficiency, military boxing proficiency, psychology proficiency, true pistol proficiency. Among them, true pistol proficiency was far more eye-catching than the other 4 green cards. True pistol proficiency, proficiency in pistol skills that are close to perfect. Green rare ability card. This was the most valuable ability card that Cale had drawn from Carter. With this rare card, he could easily defeat the officer who had rifle proficiency. Otherwise, Cale and the officer would only have a 50% chance of winning if they both had rifle proficiency. Green rare card, white card. Green ability cards are harder to come by than white cards, and the requirements for drawing distance and time are much higher. I don't need to go to the battlefield now. The rest of the green cards are not very useful. Now, what I need the most is a green ability card that can enhance my physique. Cale thought to himself that his original physique was terrible. Otherwise, he wouldn't have collapsed from heatstroke on the first day. If he wanted to adapt to the high-intensity training in the military camp, he had to change his physique. Directly drawing other people's abilities related to physique, such as military boxing proficiency, green card, running specialty, white card, swimming specialty, white card and so on could enhance his physique in disguise. Unfortunately, the white ability card didn't give much of an increase. Only the green ability card gave a significant increase in physique. Tomorrow I will continue to look for ability cards. Focus on the green ability cards related to physique. Chapter 4. Early the next morning. After the recruits finished their breakfast and did their morning exercises, they neatly put on their uniforms and gathered in the square. However, the instructor wasn't the usual Commander Brandt. Instead, it was a tall and sturdy middle-aged officer. His skin was completely tanned, and his body was filled with a murderous aura. Commander Brandt is off today, so I'll take over the shift to lead you guys in combat training. My name is Joseph Kingsley. You can call me Instructor Joseph, the instructor said loudly. Yes, sir. The recruits replied in unison. Oh right, that Kale who was in the limelight yesterday, he's in your team, right? Instructor Joseph asked with a bit of interest. This time the recruits all looked at Kale who was in the second row. Steve looked at his friend with a bit of nervousness. Soldier Kale, step forward. Instructor Joseph said, and Kale walked out with military steps. You're quite handsome. Your shooting yesterday could indeed be considered as a sharp. Instructor Joseph praised halfway before changing the topic. But you're only a sharpshooter. If you want to be an excellent American soldier, you're still far from being a sharpshooter. If the enemy gets close to you, you'll be taken down in less than a round. Looks like he's here to suppress my arrogance. Kale complained in his mind, but his face was very humble as he asked, then I wonder if Instructor Joseph can personally let me experience it. F***CK, this is a naked provocation. The recruits behind Kale felt their scalps go numb. Instructor Joseph's verbal instruction paused, and he was secretly angry. No wonder Commander Brandt was so angry that he took a break. This recruit was too prickly. Instructor Joseph didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed and said cheerfully, very good, then I'll let you experience what it means to fight in close quarters. What if I accidentally hurt you, Instructor? Kale asked worriedly. I'll allow you to fight back freely. This is an order. Instructor Joseph waved his hand, indicating that he should make the first move. Then soldier, I won't hold back. As soon as he finished speaking, Kale moved. He closed the distance of a few steps and closed the distance between them in a breath. He clenched his fists and used military boxing. Military boxing mastery. Master a military boxing technique that focuses on close combat. Green ability card. It was easy to tell if an expert was skilled or not. Instructor Joseph did not expect Kale to have mastered military boxing. He could only defend himself hastily, and as a result, he was at a disadvantage. Kale didn't care how high your military rank was, and he didn't do anything fancy. He practiced a set of military boxing smoothly to the end and used Instructor Joseph as a punching bag. What a disgrace. Joseph's expression changed slightly. He felt that the gazes of the recruits had changed. Since he was also proficient in military boxing, he could basically parry Kale's punches. However, on the surface, it looked like Kale was suppressing him. Newbie, have you had your fill of beating? You can't fight with me if you only know military boxing. Joseph changed his style and started to suppress Kale with his hands and feet. You're really something. Kale panted heavily. He tried to resist his opponent's attacks while diverting his attention to Instructor Joseph's ability cards. Military boxing mastery, endurance fighting mastery, counterattack fighting mastery, true fitness. There were 4 green cards for physique training alone. There was even a rare green card among them. No wonder you could counter me so quickly after I was at a disadvantage. Kale's eyes lit up as he started to draw cards from Instructor Joseph's body. To draw a green card, he had to be within 1 meter of Instructor Joseph for 3 minutes. This was the real reason why Kyle wanted to spar with the instructor. There was no better reason to get close to the instructor than to spar. Kale was at a disadvantage, but he stubbornly resisted. Joseph could not knock him down. He wanted to stop, but as soon as he relaxed, Kale continued to use military boxing. Kid, do you really want to force me to hurt you? Instructor Joseph gritted his teeth. However, Kale seemed to be getting more and more energetic as the fight went on. He just kept pestering Instructor Joseph. After 3 minutes, counterattack fighting mastery was successfully drawn. Kale felt a warm power flowing through his body, increasing his physique. At the same time, he mastered the counterattack fighting technique as if he had practiced it for more than 10 years. Fall. Instructor Joseph increased the force of his punches and was about to knock Kale to the ground. However, Kale suddenly wrapped his arms around Instructor Joseph's arms and started to counterattack. Counterattack fighting. Military boxing. Kale, who was enhanced by the card, continued to close the gap between him and Instructor Joseph. This allowed the battle, which was about to end, to continue to drag on. Instructor Joseph and Kale fought back and forth. Dust flew everywhere, and for a moment, neither of them could take the other down. A fight between masters. The recruits at the side were dumbstruck. The continuous and intense close combat attracted even more troops from the rest of the training field. Very quickly, the two were surrounded in 3 circles on the inside and 3 on the outside. What happened over there? Agent Carter, who was passing by, saw the scene and asked the officer who was rushing over. The officer shrugged and answered helplessly, "A recruit is practicing close combat with Joseph." "Joseph?" Carter's sexy lips opened slightly in surprise. "Yes, Joseph. He's the training instructor for combat subjects." The officer smiled bitterly. "I don't know how the recruit did it. He actually lasted for almost 10 minutes under Joseph's hands." "What's the recruit's name?" Carter opened the document in her hand. "Go. Soldier Kale." The card was successfully drawn. True fitness physique. Maintain a strong and superior physique, making you healthier than ordinary people. Increase endurance and physical strength to a certain extent. Green rare ability card. It's a success. Kale panted heavily. His military uniform was already soaked in sweat. He had obtained the last physique type ability card. Although the power that obviously increased his physique surged into his body, the soreness and tiredness were deeply imprinted on his body. He kicked his legs forward and jumped back as if he had escaped the battle. Instructor Joseph continued to pursue him with a low growl. Kale suddenly raised both his hands. "Okay. I'm out of energy. I surrender." "Huh?" Instructor Joseph was also panting. At the last moment, his fist stopped in front of Kale's nose. His beard stood up as he said, "What, you can't do it? You're indeed an instructor. You're stronger than me in terms of strength, speed, and combat skills. Soldier, I surrender. If you didn't keep going easy on me, I'm afraid I would have lost an arm or a leg." Kale sat on the ground and didn't forget to flatter him. "You little brat." Instructor Joseph scolded. He didn't care how many people were watching and sat on the ground in exhaustion. "At the beginning I did let you go easy on me. But after that I became serious in the battle. I have to say your combat talent is the best I've seen in my 20 years of service. It's already at the level of a monster." In these 10 minutes of battle, Instructor Joseph felt that Kale was learning from him. His close combat skills were improving rapidly. How could he not be surprised? "Awesome. Let's spar again in the future when we have time," Instructor Joseph said with a smile. He really liked a soldier who could master combat skills so quickly. "No problem." Kale nodded without showing any signs of weakness. Other than the 3 physique type ability cards that Instructor Joseph had just drawn, he still had a few other green ability cards. "You soldiers dash!" Instructor Joseph raised his eyebrows and looked around. He shouted, "What are you looking at? Don't you need to train? You want to spar with me? We're not monsters like Kale." Chapter 5. In the underground office of the person in charge of the training base. Kale Doff's personal file. Male, age 22, height 178 centimeters, 68 kilograms. Born in 1921, hometown is 199 Highland Street, Brooklyn, New York, USA. Current family status. Single, both parents were U.S. soldiers who participated in the Secret War in 1935 and died honorably, becoming martyrs. Passed the physical examination at the World's Fair this year and became this batch of super soldier recruits, entering the base for training. On the first day of recruit training, he competed with Officer Brandt in marksmanship, and Kale won perfectly with his superb pistol shooting skills. On the second day of recruit training, he practiced close combat with Officer Joseph, but lost due to lack of stamina. However, 3 days later, the two of them once again fought one-on-one and Kyle came out on top. On the third day of recruit training, Agent Carter suggested that he be listed as the first choice for super soldier. Officer Brandt suggested that he be listed as the first choice for super soldier. Officer Joseph suggested that he be listed as the first choice for super soldier. At the bottom of Kale's file, there were the signatures of the 3 people in charge of the selection of the super soldier program. I didn't expect that the selection period, which was originally scheduled to be 1 week, would have more than 3 people in charge jointly recommend a soldier on the 6th day. The dignified middle-aged man put down the file in his hand. The general's uniform and 4-star military rank on his body showed his extraordinary identity. "To be honest, I still don't like that Kale soldier." Officer Brandt pursed his lips and sighed, "But I still have to admit that he does have all the talent and talents of a soldier." Officer Joseph nodded in agreement and said emotionally, yes. In just 5 or 6 days of training, he already has the qualities of the top Special Forces soldiers. General Chester, if you didn't remind me that the super soldier drug hasn't been tested yet, I would have thought that Kale was a super soldier born from the secret experiment. If the super soldier drug can work on him, then he might be the most perfect soldier in the history of the United States. Agent Carter coldly gave her own judgment. Correction, not just the United States but the whole world, Officer Joseph said with certainty. After the 3 people in the underground office finished their discussion, General Chester's eyes fell on an old doctor wearing glasses. Dr. Abraham Erskine, what do you think? He asked. In the end, you were the one who created the super soldier potion. You should have also reviewed the candidates for the first test. Kale's soldiers, their bodies and willpower are indeed very good. Dr. Abraham answered slowly. In the end, he made up his mind and said what he thought, but I think Soldier Steve should be more suitable. His will and justice are necessary for a perfect soldier. Steve was originally a candidate for a super soldier, but Kale, who had appeared out of nowhere, was too outstanding. He was so outstanding that he had practically suppressed the radiance of all the recruits in the training base. 3 against 1? General Chester tapped his fingers on the table and asked the last man in the office, Howard Stark, as the person in charge of the scientific strategy of the Super Soldier Project. Do you have anything to say? Howard, who was dressed like a gentleman in a suit, shrugged and said with a smile, I'm only in charge of the scientific strategy project. Selecting the soldiers is your job. I have no opinion on who you choose. General Chester thought for a moment and said, how about this, let's get someone to contact Soldier Kale first. Let him know about the Super Soldier Project and see what he thinks and wants. I'll go. Carter, who had always been quiet, suddenly spoke up. Okay, you go. General Chester nodded and said seriously, tomorrow, prepare for the final experiment of the super soldier. In the recruits' dormitory. Kale had just finished showering. His golden hair was still dripping with water. He was only wearing a pair of shorts and stood in front of the mirror with his upper body bare. His exquisite facial features were as if they were carved by a knife. The sun didn't lose its handsomeness. Most importantly, he had a strong and tall physique. His abs looked like they were made of steel. More than 10 green ability cards from the physique and skill category. Is this the effect? Kale looked at his strong body in the mirror with satisfaction. He was very sure that his current strength, speed, and physique were better than those Special Forces soldiers who had been fighting for a long time. Moreover, he hadn't been idle for the past few days. Other than the physique ability cards, he had drawn the rest of the white and green ability cards without fail. Now he had a total of 36 green ability cards for all kinds of professional abilities. As for the white ability cards, he had more than 400 shocking numbers. This was what people called a genius and an all-rounder. It's been almost a week since my rebirth. According to the progress of Captain America's movie, the Super Soldier Project should be starting soon. Kale was thinking about this when he heard a bang and the dormitory door was opened. Steve. Kale walked out of the bathroom in confusion. When he saw the beauty walking into the dormitory, he was surprised. Agent Carter? You're in the wrong place. This is the recruit dormitory. That's right. The person who walked into the dormitory was Agent Carter. She was wearing her military uniform, which accentuated her mature figure. Holding a document in one hand, she walked briskly into the hall of the dormitory. I'm not in the wrong place. I'm here to look for you. Carter frowned slightly and asked coldly, shouldn't it be the recruit group training time now? Why are you taking a shower in the dormitory? This is just a small privilege for me to break the single soldier record in the training base. Kale smiled. He didn't rush to put on his shirt. He just put a towel on his shoulders to cover his important parts. I don't have anything to entertain you. Agent Carter, please find a place to sit. Carter remained cold and indifferent. She looked around the dormitory and didn't find any chairs. In the end, she chose to sit on the side of a bed. Tell me, why are you looking for a recruit like me? Kale didn't stand on ceremony. He used the towel to dry his wet hair and sat on the other side of the bed. The single bed made the two of them less than a meter apart. Why are you sitting so close? Carter looked at him coldly. Kale shrugged and said, this is my bed. It's normal for me to sit on my own bed. Carter was speechless. She didn't expect to sit on Kale's bed when she randomly chose it. Kale maintained his smile. There was a reason why he sat so close. After all, Carter still had nearly 10 green ability cards that he didn't have. With a beauty chatting on the side and cards randomly drawn, this was much better than a few days ago. Then I'll be direct. How much do you know about super soldiers? Carter asked, her legs pressed together. Super soldiers? Cale's face showed a surprised expression. He replied, I only know that this batch of recruits was originally recruited for the Super Soldier Project. I don't know much about the rest. Let me explain it to you. The Super Soldier Project was the result of Dr. Abraham's research. It was an experiment where a type of serum medicine was injected into the human body and stimulated the cell vitality to transform the human body from the inside out. In theory, it could at least perfectly improve a person's physique by more than 3 times. It can cultivate a super soldier's combat power that far surpasses that of ordinary soldiers. Carter explained tirelessly. The training officer should have already told you recruits. Within this week, the first person to participate in the super soldier experiment will be selected. I know. Cale nodded but seemed to be a little absent-minded. He smiled and said, So you chose me? We haven't made the final decision yet. We're just asking for your opinion first, Carter said. Her gaze swept past Cale's streamlined abdominal muscles and quickly moved away. Super soldier experiment? Cale muttered, his palms supporting his chin as he fell into deep thought. In the movie, Steve was the first person selected to be the pioneer of the super soldier experiment. He then obtained the most perfect physique of human beings and became Captain America. The super soldier medicine was also robbed by Hydra's spies at the moment when Steve succeeded. In the end, the serum medicine was destroyed, the doctor was killed, and the super soldier could no longer be replicated. Now, because of his excellent performance, could he replace Steve as the first person in the super soldier experiment? Chapter 6. Rejected? He actually rejected it. Hearing Cale's straightforward answer, Carter was stunned. Her usually cold and calm face showed a surprised expression. What? This is the dream of all the recruits in the training base. Cale smiled, slowly extended a finger and said in a relaxed tone, First of all, this is an experiment. I can't consider the possibility of failure, even if the probability of failure is very low. I believe in myself. Even without the super soldier potion, I can still become the best soldier. Cale extended a second finger meaningfully. Secondly, this is also the most important point. What is it? Carter asked curiously. It was the first time she had such a strong sense of curiosity. Although I rejected the chance to be the first super soldier, I can recommend someone, Steve. He has the potential not to lose to me. I hope you can consider him carefully. Cale said in the end. Coming out of the barracks dormitory, Carter was still in a trance. In her opinion, Cale gave the chance to be the first super soldier to Steve. She didn't know if it was stupidity or loyalty. But this way the candidate for the super soldier tomorrow is basically confirmed. Carter sighed. The first seat Cale gave up, so it was the second seat Steve. In the barracks dormitory. Cale was still looking at the green ability card he got from Carter. Suddenly, the door opened and a thin figure rushed in. Steve, why are you in such a hurry? Cale didn't even raise his head. He knew it was Steve. Cale. Why? Steve ran to the bedside excitedly. His face was full of confusion as he asked loudly, Why did you give me the chance to be the super soldier? Oh, you found out so quickly? Dr. Abraham came to me and told me about it. Then tomorrow you will leave the dormitory and go to the secret laboratory. Cale seemed to have guessed it. He smiled and said, Isn't this good? For you, this is an opportunity to reach the sky in one step. If you can become a super soldier, your life will be turned upside down. For me, of course, it is a dream, but you also need this opportunity. Steve said bitterly. You have to ask why. Then I can only say that this opportunity is more important to you. Cale replied softly. He made this choice, of course, after careful consideration. As long as he had the ability to draw cards, he could quickly draw other people's abilities without any risk. There was no need to do the super soldier experiment. Although Steve had succeeded as the main character in the Captain America movie, there was no guarantee that the super soldier serum would be perfect. Even if it was successful, there was a certain probability. And if there was no Captain America, Marvel's main plot was likely to be messed up, which was what Cale didn't want to see. If you want to thank me, then work hard and complete the super soldier experiment for me. Don't let me down. Cale smiled and patted Steve on the shoulder sincerely. Brother, you go and fight to become stronger and then come back and let me draw cards. Just treat it as an investment with a small capital and a huge profit. That's all there is to it. Cale, you are so good to me. Steve, who didn't know the truth, had tears in his eyes, which made Cale feel a chill and almost kicked him out of bed. The next morning. Steve packed his things and secretly left the training base. No one among the recruits knew what he was going to do. Only Cale knew that the Super Soldier project had officially started somewhere in the underground base. Another day passed. Officer Brandt gathered all the freshmen at the training base and announced the end of the Super Soldier project, which caused an uproar among the recruits. Cale knew that everything was going according to the normal track of Marvel's history. The first super artificial hero in Marvel's history, Captain America, had been quietly born. In the officer's office. It's a pity that the doctor is dead and the super soldier serum can't be made. Soldier Cale, you lost the only chance to become a super soldier. Officer Joseph said to Cale regretfully. He really felt sorry for Cale. This is God's choice. Cale responded with a sigh on the surface, but there was no ripple in his heart. With the ability to draw cards in hand, who said that he couldn't become a super soldier without the super soldier serum? Cale made a request. Officer Joseph, I heard that Steve succeeded. Can I see him? I'm afraid not. Officer Joseph shook his head and explained, now Steve is in the secret base, undergoing personal training to adapt to his body. General Chester ordered that no one is to disturb him. Then when will the training end? Cale asked anxiously. I'm afraid it will be a few months later. Officer Joseph answered truthfully. A few months? Cale frowned. This was similar to the plot in the Captain America movie, but he didn't expect the training to be completely closed off to the outside world. If he couldn't get in touch with Steve, he wouldn't be able to draw the ability card from him. The next few months will pass quickly. All right, General Chester also has new orders for you. Officer Joseph said with a serious face. Soldier Cale, due to his excellent performance during the training period, he will participate in the 102nd Regiment at the front line of the war as a superior recruit alone. Go to the front line? Cale was shocked. This sudden major news was far beyond his imagination. Cale, you're about to face a real war. Don't die so easily in the hands of the Nasurin. After Officer Joseph finished speaking, he placed the combat uniform, rifle ammunition, and the information about the mission to the front line on the desk. Soldier, follow the general's orders. Cale took the items feeling a little confused. He didn't expect to go to the front line so soon and participate in World War II. His original plan was to obtain the super soldier ability card from Steve so that he could face the war with a strong guarantee, but he didn't expect it to be so sudden. This was one of the drawbacks of Cale's outstanding training in the past few days, which resulted in him graduating from the training base early and going to the front line. Officer Joseph waved goodbye. There will be a helicopter coming to pick you up in the afternoon. Go back early and prepare. Yes. Cale nodded and walked out of the office with the items in his hand. Come back alive, brat. Watching Cale's figure, Officer Joseph let out a sigh. In a large-scale war, no matter how outstanding a soldier was, there was a high probability of death. Opening the door, the warm sunlight outside bathed Cale's face, sweeping away the fog in his heart. He relaxed the grip on the combat uniform in his hand and smiled. He would straighten himself out when he got there. Now, whether it was his physique or skills, he was the best of the best. With the card draw system in hand, there was no reason for him to die in this World War II. If he were to die, he would die under the snap of the future Thanos' fingers. Chapter 7. 1943. During World War II. Led by Adolf Hitler, the Nazi Party invaded Europe on a large scale. As a recruit, Cale was sent directly to the 102nd Marine Regiment of the 6th Marine Division in the frontline area. In the afternoon, a military helicopter came to the training base to pick him up. Cale arrived at the frontline area around 9 p.m. As soon as the helicopter arrived above the temporary camp of the combat department, he understood why he was sent here in a hurry. Looking down from the helicopter, under more than a dozen warm yellow lights, the tents and military supplies in the temporary camp were in a mess. The officers and soldiers in the middle were like ants on a hot pan. F***CK, those lunatics are still pushing forward. Requesting more ammunition support. Someone come and help me lift the medical stand. Where are the men? Is there no one coming from the rear? All troops, go to the war zone for reinforcement. We can't let them take even half a step into our territory. The combat chief used a loudspeaker to give orders. The wailing wounded with broken arms and legs were constantly carried into the tents by the military doctors on stretchers. Soldiers covered in blood carried new ammunition and equipment from the helicopters behind them, sat in muddy military vehicles, and drove into the darkness in the direction of the war zone. The U.S. military, which had always been known for its strict discipline, was now in a mess. Soldier. Are you the new reinforcements? A bearded officer covered in sweat stepped forward and grabbed Kale, who had just come down from the military helicopter. Yes, Soldier Kale is here to report, Kale quickly responded. You're the only recruit? No need to report, we don't have enough men. Take your weapons and go directly to the battlefield. You can weave them later. The bearded officer hurriedly said as he took Kale's backpack and threw it next to the military tent. He completely treated him as cannon fodder. Indeed, if a recruit with no combat experience went to a large-scale battlefield for the first time, it was basically a one-way trip. I got it. Kale took a deep breath. He was already wearing the combat uniform with a built-in bulletproof vest and a steel helmet. He held the assault rifle and jumped directly into the back of a military vehicle transporting supplies. The four-wheel-drive military vehicle came and went without stopping. It carried the supplies and quickly rushed to the front of the military zone. The two lights in front of the vehicle were like sticks that poked into the darkness. Kale gripped his assault rifle tightly. As the explosions in front of the military vehicle became clearer and clearer, his heartbeat and adrenaline continued to rise. I don't think I'm scared but vaguely excited, Kale muttered to himself. He had drawn too many ability cards, and there were more than 10 of them that strengthened his willpower. Forget it, it was better to divert his attention. Kale's gaze fell on the supplies in the back of the car. With a thought, a series of item cards appeared on the surface of the boxes. First aid rack, emergency medical kit, military canned food supply, American grenade, assault rifle, 1 box of medium caliber rifle bullets. There were many white item cards and there were a few green items among them such as high explosive grenade, high sniper rifle, and short rocket launcher. These item cards were different from the past. They were all in a drawable state. I see. Kale's eyes lit up. He muttered to himself, I can't draw personal items that are in the possession of others. These supplies are considered ownerless for the time being, so I can draw freely and turn them into item cards to carry with me. It would be a waste not to take them. Kale immediately began to draw from the supplies in the car. He turned some of them into item cards to carry with him. After all, these were rushed to be transported to the front line for battle. No one would notice if there were less of them. However, he originally thought that the green item cards would be the same as the green ability cards, requiring more than 3 minutes to draw. He did not expect that the drawing of ownerless items would all take 3 seconds. 5 rocket launchers. 2 should be enough. Kale hesitated for a moment when he drew the last card. Suddenly, a series of intense gunshots erupted. After the driver of the military vehicle let out a scream, the military vehicle shook violently and crashed into an obstacle before coming to a stop. Enemy attack. Kale reacted very quickly. His body immediately tensed up. He quietly held the gun and crouched down, leaning against the back wall of the car. He pricked up his ears to listen for sounds outside. Thud thud thud. Several footsteps quickly approached. Kale quickly understood that the enemy did not seem to have the intention of directly destroying the supply vehicle. Instead, they wanted to plunder it. They can't bear to destroy the supplies in the vehicle. This is my chance. Kale was unusually calm. Hundreds of actual combat skills and ability cards were perfectly displayed at this moment. He held the gun in his right hand and quietly spread out his left hand in the air. A green item card quickly materialized between his 2 fingers. Unlike ability cards, it could only be used to materialize one's skills. Item cards were originally materialized cards. Therefore, item cards could be materialized and materialized. They could also be directly transformed back into the original item for use. Be careful. Let's go and take a look. Don't let your guard down. 2 enemy soldiers were whispering to each other in German as they trotted toward the back of the military vehicle covered by a green tarpaulin. Just as they were about to pry open the tarpaulin with their bayonet-tipped rifles, a black, round metal object was thrown out from inside. F***ck a grenade. Get down. As soon as he finished speaking, the 2 German soldiers at the front were directly blasted into pieces. Gravel and flesh splattered under the night sky. A figure quickly rushed out from the back of the vehicle. Enemy. The remaining 3 German soldiers who were on guard not far away shouted. They tightened their grip on the wrench and sprayed toward the area behind the vehicle. The bullets missed and hit the ground and the bodies of their comrades. It was too fast. Under the cover of the night and the high explosive grenade, they did not have time to lock onto Kale's figure. When they finally reacted and wanted to look for him, Kale's strong counterattack had already begun. Boom. A high-pitched gunshot rang out from the darkness. The German soldier at the front was directly hit in the head between his eyebrows. Red and white blood splattered backward onto the other two soldiers. The two soldiers were so frightened that they did not even have time to confirm the direction of the bullet before two more gunshots rang out. There were exactly 3 gunshots. The gunshots were like the judgment of the Grim Reaper. The remaining German soldiers quickly became corpses lying on the ground. Not bad. Cale walked out from behind a tree in the night sky and glanced at the bodies of the soldiers lying in a pool of blood. When he rushed out of the back of the vehicle, he scanned the enemy's position with the corner of his eye. He waited until he dodged the first wave of bullets before he shot accurately. It was the first battle in his life. It was perfect for him to kill 5 people without any injuries. First time killing someone. Cale looked at the half-dead body of a German soldier who still had his eyes wide open. It was obviously a soldier who died with a grievance. There was no joy or sorrow on his face. He was as cold as the Grim Reaper. Cale originally thought that after experiencing his first killing, coupled with the extremely bloody scene in front of him, he would at least vomit. But in fact he felt nothing in his heart. His incomparably firm heart warned him that if he did not kill them, he would be lying on the ground as a cold corpse. Chapter 8. After the short battle ended, Cale began to collect the spoils on the battlefield. After the German soldiers died, all the items on their bodies were available for drawing. This is. Cale looked at the 2 parchment scrolls he found on the body of a German soldier. With a thought, the information of the 2 item cards appeared in front of his eyes. Encrypted Map 1. Contains the detailed terrain map of the German army's local combat zone, as well as the location of their own temporary base. Encrypted Map 2. Contains the information collected by the German elite team on the U.S. military's distribution, combat camps and material transportation routes. No wonder they dared to go so deep into the enemy's rear. So it's the German elite team. Cale had a thoughtful look on his face as he turned the 2 parchment maps into cards. The map was equivalent to a strategy. It contained the distribution of the forces of the 2 armies, as well as the detailed terrain of the local area. No wonder the German army brought so much pressure to the U.S. military. Cale quickly drew the equipment from the German soldiers and transferred it to the military supplies in his military vehicle. Cale didn't mind having too much ammunition. He took all the military supplies that should have been plundered by the enemy and didn't feel guilty at all. Finally, looking at the military vehicle that he had plundered, Cale thought for a moment. After cleaning up the 2 bodies in the driver's seat, he also turned the slightly damaged military vehicle into a card. After drawing the cards, Cale finally had a car full of military supplies. He was fully armed. Ready to go, Cale stood on a small slope and looked at the battlefield not far ahead. It's time to join the battle on the front line. After experiencing the baptism of killing the enemy for the first time in his life, Cale had a deeper understanding of his own strength. He believed that with the ability cards and item cards on him, he would dare to fight even if it was a large-scale war. Since this was an experience that a reborn person had to experience, then let the war come more fiercely. In the battlefield on the front line. Boom. Da-da-da. The sound of bullets and cannons intersected like a symphony in a thunderstorm. Red and blue flames burst out from the muzzles of guns and bullets, as well as the dazzling light of artillery shells and grenades exploding in the night. The American and German soldiers fought fiercely. The American soldiers were mainly focused on defense. They used the rocks piled up in pits as cover and lined up in a line, constantly blocking the German soldiers who wanted to break through the front line. Even though bullets and shells were constantly reaping the lives of the German soldiers who were charging forward, the German army was still invading inch by inch with the corpses of their comrades on the ground as cover. The distance between the 2 armies was constantly shrinking. These people have all been brainwashed, they're all war maniacs who don't care for their own lives. A black sergeant leading an American team gritted his teeth, glanced at the soldiers around him who were struggling to hold on with bloodshot eyes, clenched his fists and growled into the combat walkie-talkie, "Our soldiers are running out of ammunition. Are the reinforcements and supplies? If this continues, our middle line of defense can only hold on for another 10 minutes dash." As soon as the sergeant finished speaking, a muffled explosion suddenly sounded. The shell dragged an ear-piercing sound as it landed on the pit a few meters in front of him. A soldier on the side was instantly blown to smithereens. This is. The sergeant rolled on the ground from the impact of the shell. Ignoring the ringing in his ears and the discomfort in his body, he struggled to stand up. He looked forward from the destroyed fortress and saw a huge steel machine crawling forward like a monster. Countless corpses of German soldiers on the ground were crushed into meat paste by its wheels. Those bastards, they've been holding back for so long and they still have tanks? I was wrong, it's not 10 minutes, it's 10 seconds and a hole will be torn in the defense line of the war zone. The sergeant showed a look of despair. As the German tank drove forward, it adjusted the direction of the artillery fire. Just before the second shell was fired, the same dull and loud sound of artillery suddenly rang out behind the sergeant. Boom! The rocket was not only ear-piercing, but the tail of the rocket was also emitting thick smoke. It drew a parabola in the air above the war zone and accurately crossed the distance of 40 meters and landed on the barrel of the German tank. Coincidentally, the tank's second shell had not been fired yet. Suddenly, under a burst of bright sparks, the steel tank was turned into a pile of scrap metal, causing many casualties to the German soldiers who wanted to break through to the front. Nice. The American soldiers who saw this scene immediately jumped for joy. Even the black sergeant's eyes widened. The originally desperate situation was instantly reversed by this rocket. He couldn't help but turn around. He could see that a dozen meters behind the defense line of the pit, a strong and handsome young man was carrying a rocket launcher on his shoulder. It was Cale, who had just rushed over. Seeing the eyes of many soldiers focused on him, Cale smiled. Soldier Cale, here to reinforce. This torturous and cruel defense war lasted for an entire night. It was not until the first ray of light fell on the front line that the German army gave up their suicidal breakthrough and retreated like a receding tide. This way, it could be considered a temporary victory for the American army. This was a Pyrrhic victory. The defense line divided the line of life and death. The corpses of the German and American soldiers piled up into mountains on the battlefield in the wilderness. Several miles of land was scorched and dark red blood stained the ground. Countless remaining American soldiers didn't even have the strength to cheer. After a night of continuous high-intensity battle, their bodies and minds were already exhausted. Many directly fainted on the ground, but their hands were still tightly holding onto their rifles. Cale also sat in the pit with a tired face. His body was covered in blood and mud. This night's experience was unprecedented. Although he had the skill of a sharpshooter and could reap a life with a bullet, the harsh survival environment on the battlefield, coupled with the endless stream of enemy troops, also gave him a huge death pressure. It was like a tug-of-war against the Grim Reaper. His body needed to be tense at all times. If he relaxed even a little, the enemy's bullets could open a bloody hole in his body. This was a large-scale war. When the enemy retreated, Cale threw the gun with the hot barrel on the ground. The rifle was smoking and sizzling. Clearly, it had completed its mission and was scrapped. "Soldier, you're Cale, right?" The black sergeant struggled to get close to Zhang Han. His left eye was completely destroyed and one of his arms was hanging down due to the bullet wound. However, he still grinned. "You look so young. This must be your first time on the battlefield, right?" "That's right." Cale nodded while panting. "It really is your first time on the battlefield. And in such a large-scale war, your performance was too outstanding. You can't be treated as a new recruit at all. When I go back, I'll ask the colonel to apply for military service for you alone." The sergeant praised. "Whatever. After experiencing such a war, I feel like I'm still alive. This is already the blessing of the goddess of victory." Cale said emotionally. "Yes, it's already a blessing to be alive." The sergeant smiled and said, "Let's wait a little longer. There will be reinforcements coming from the rear soon. Let's take our place and we can rest for half a day." Chapter 9. In the temporary camp at the front line in the command tent. Last night we lost 987 soldiers in the battle. The German enemy has more casualties than us, nearly 2,000. After listening to the soldiers' report, Colonel Marcos frowned deeply. Nearly 3,000 soldiers had died, and countless more were injured and unable to fight. One could only imagine how tragic the battle last night was. Germany's Nasser was so crazy last night that they wanted to occupy this area. They must want to use this as a strategic area and then break into the hinterland of Europe. Although they temporarily retreated just now, they will not give up so easily. After resting, they will come back again. Correspondent, how many troops can we send as reinforcements? Colonel Marcos frowned. The correspondent replied, "The manpower and military resources in the other frontline areas are also very tight. There are only 3 troops, 300 people, that can come as reinforcements. One of the troops is made up of pure recruits that have just been formed from the training base." Recruits? Colonel Marcos heard this and could not help but roar. "What's the use of recruits? I'm at the front line, not a care center." At this moment, a soldier's voice came from outside the tent. "Reporting. A soldier named Kale is here. He said that he has something important to inform you. Soldier Kale? Colonel Marcos was stunned. He could not remember this person suddenly appearing in his camp. After pondering for a moment, he still let Kale in. Kale had just walked into the tent when Colonel Marcos saw him and was slightly stunned. He blurted out, "Aren't you the recruit who reported last night?" "Yes, Colonel Marcos." Kale nodded. He recognized the colonel. The colonel in front of him was the one who had picked him up last night and sent him directly to the front line. "What are you doing here?" Colonel Marcos asked coldly. Kale had not washed himself yet. His combat uniform was full of blood and filth. "I obtained a very important intelligence item from a German elite team last night. I thought it would be of great help to the battle, so I came to see you directly after the battle ended," Kale said as he took out 2 parchment scrolls from his pocket. "German elite team? Intelligence item?" Surprised, Colonel Marcus took the parchment and asked, "How did you get it?" "Of course I killed them and found them from their corpses." Kale shrugged and briefly recounted the encounter with the German elite team on the way to the war zone. "You killed all the enemy elite squads lurking in the rear area of our main force?" Colonel Marcus was in disbelief. Then he opened the parchment and saw that it was a map and countless German secret codes. "It really is the German army's secret signal." Colonel Marcus widened his eyes in surprise and joy. The information they gathered about the war zone should all be on there. "Communication soldiers, immediately go to the rear and ask the professionals who can decipher the code to come over." "No need, no need." Kale gently waved his hand. "No need?" Colonel Marcus and the soldier looked at Kale in confusion. A smile appeared on Kale's tired young face. "It's a German code. I just happened to learn it from the professionals at the training base." 3 days later. It had been 3 days since Kale was sent to the front line to fight. At this time in the underground research room. Bang, bang, bang. In the training ground, the super heavy sandbags hanging from the ceiling were constantly thrown into the air by the powerful punches. Wearing a sweat-soaked singlet, a tall and muscular blonde youth stood steadily in front of the sandbags. Every time he punched, he unleashed an unimaginable amount of power, causing the sandbags to sway back and forth. Carter, who was watching from the side, couldn't bear to see him like this. She reminded him, "Steve, you should take a break. You should take a rest. You've been like this for an hour." Bang. Steve acted as if he didn't hear her. He was still punching the sandbags with more force, his sweat splattering on the ground. "Steve." Carter raised his voice coldly. Only then did Steve hit the sandbag and the swing-like sandbag finally stopped. Steve smiled bitterly and said, "What am I? A super soldier? Or an experimental subject hidden in the basement? I don't want to be like this." "Steve, your battle hasn't come yet." Carter comforted him. "When will it come? How long do I have to wait?" Steve's handsome and righteous face was full of pain. He said dejectedly, "My brother, Kale. He has gone to the front line to fight. And I, Steve Rogers, was entrusted with high hopes by him, but I stayed here to live a peaceful life without the sound of war." Kale. Hearing this name, Carter couldn't help but fall silent. "I should be able to do more than spend my boring time here," Steve said. "Of course. Soldier Steve, of course you can do more." A strong voice suddenly interrupted. Steve and Carter looked sideways and saw an old man in a suit and tie. "I'm a senator. I have a lot of stage resources and opportunities in my hands, enough for you to show your extraordinary talents to the people of the country. It's also a strong help in the current war." The senator smiled and took out a business card from his pocket and handed it over. "I call it Captain America Publicity Plan." "Captain America?" Steve hesitated for a moment, and finally took the business card from the senator. At the same time, the front line camp. "Kale, the colonel wants you to go to the headquarters." "Headquarters?" Kale, who had just returned from the battle, was slightly stunned. He handed the gun in his hand to the messenger in charge of passing the message and walked directly to the white tent of the headquarters. "Soldier Kale reporting. Come in." As soon as Kyle stepped into the tent, he found that it was full of officers in military uniforms. There were nearly a dozen of them. Colonel Marcus, the highest-ranking officer in the headquarters, was sitting in a chair. After seeing Kale come in, Colonel Marcus raised his voice and introduced, "Everyone, this is the soldier who brought back the 2 intelligence maps 3 days ago and completed the interpretation, Kale." More than a dozen officers suddenly focused their eyes on Kale. Seeing that he was so handsome and young, they also showed an amazed expression. "Soldier Kale, you really made a great contribution this time." "Yes, I heard that one of the maps was to collect information about our camp. If it was brought back by those abominable soldiers, I'm afraid this place would have been bombed by the bombs of the bombers. Don't give me that. The second map is more important. It's all important. To be able to bring back the intelligence maps and complete the interpretation, the quality of recruits is really getting better and better. A rare talent. Our army needs fresh blood like this. Kale was immersed in verbal praise until Colonel Marcus coughed and cleared his throat. Only then did the people in the tent stop. Soldier Kale, you have made a great contribution to the army. After the results of this battle, I will report them together. Colonel Marcus said solemnly. Kale's pupils shrank and he said in surprise, the results of this battle? Could it be? That's right. Colonel Marcus nodded and spread the information on the second parchment on the table. He said in a dignified and domineering manner, thanks to you on the second map, there are several German camps outside the war zone marked. Chapter 10. The purpose of this counterattack is to concentrate our forces and destroy the 5 German camps in one fell swoop. From the secret signal on the map, one of them is a large combat base, 3 of them are medium-sized camps, and 1 is a transit camp with fewer soldiers. Colonel Marcus began to explain, and every officer in the command tent listened attentively. It was clear that they had been waiting for a chance to counterattack for a long time. They had been passively suppressed by the German army, and sooner or later the frontline defense area would completely fall. But if this counterattack was successful, it would break the spirit of the German army. The plan is for me and 2 lieutenants to personally lead 5 or more troops to attack the enemy's large combat base. As for the 3 mid-sized camps, each of them will be led by 3 sub-lieutenants and above. Colonel Marcus used his finger to gesture on the large map as he spoke. The map was a 3-dimensional simulation specially made for the military. It clearly showed that there were 5 German camps and fortresses outside the defense line. It seems that we really have to do something big this time. The combat commander is personally going out, and we have the coordinates of the enemy's base. We have enough manpower to make arrangements, and we have a surprise attack at night. It will be difficult to lose this battle. Kale thought to himself. He was the one who was responsible for deciphering the secret signal, so he had long been clear about the information recorded on the map. When he heard the colonel's plan for the surprise attack, he knew that this battle was basically in the bag. This was the importance of information in war. The side that won was often the side that had the upper hand. In the following time, Colonel Marcus finished distributing the troops that each officer was responsible for and the surprise attack plan. After the officers knew that they were responsible for tonight, they quickly left the tent with a small copy of the battle plan and began to prepare for the surprise attack. Soon, only Kale was left in the command tent. The commander couldn't have forgotten about me, right? Kale thought to himself as he looked at Colonel Marcus, who had returned to his chair. But he didn't waste any time. He used the opportunity of the planning meeting to draw a few good green ability cards from the officers beside him. After accumulating the green ability cards to a certain extent, the increase in physical fitness and ability would no longer be obvious when stacking the ability cards of the same specialization. Colonel Marcus took a sip of water before shifting his gaze to Kale. His tense face relaxed a lot as he smiled and said, "Soldier Kale, tonight's assault plan is very important. Although you just came back from the front line this morning, you still have to participate in the assault plan after resting in the afternoon." "Of course. It is my honor as an American soldier to be able to participate in the first counterattack against Nasir. Tonight I will do my best to kill the enemy," Kale said righteously. "Your willpower and drive as a soldier, as well as your stunning performance on the battlefield, I've heard from many sergeants these days." Colonel Marcus nodded in satisfaction. He was really satisfied with this new soldier. The more he looked at him, the more pleasing he felt to his eyes. When a new recruit went to the battlefield, it was already very good to expect him to display 70% of his normal strength. But Kale, who had just arrived, performed like a veteran who had been through hundreds of battles. He was like a fish in water on the battlefield. In addition to arranging the counterattack plan, Colonel Marcus also deliberately confirmed Kale's identity with the rear base. He was afraid that he was a German spy in disguise or something. Colonel Marcus cleared his throat and said meaningfully, "But tonight, I'm not asking you to just participate in the assault as a soldier." "Not as a soldier? Then what?" Kale was surprised. He suddenly guessed something and said with a strange expression, "Colonel, you're not asking me to lead the troops to attack the 5th German small transit camp tonight, are you?" "That's right." Colonel Marcus nodded to show that he was not joking. He took out a military badge from the drawer and put it on the table. He said precisely, "Of course. You're not leading as a soldier but as a corporal." "Me? Corporal?" Kale pointed at his nose in shock. Although the rank of a corporal was not high in the army, it was definitely the rank of an officer. In 3 days of combat, he had directly skipped the rank of a lower, middle, and upper private to become a corporal? When did the rank of a corporal become so worthless? "What, you don't believe in your own ability?" Colonel Marcus smiled. "Of course I believe in my own ability. But to be directly promoted to corporal, I really didn't expect it." Kale shrugged and quickly calmed down. In peacetime, to be promoted from a recruit to a corporal in 3 days is impossible even if you have the support of a general, Colonel Marcus said solemnly. Colonel Marcus said solemnly, "But this is a time of world war. Soldier Kyle, the number of enemies you've personally killed in the past few days is probably several times more than what the veterans who lived in peacetime have killed in the past 10 years. Outstanding individual combat performance and superior intelligence analysis. It's a pity for a talent like you to only be a soldier. Since you have the ability and the army is in urgent need of elite talents like you, what's the big deal about being directly promoted to corporal when you have substantial military merits as a foundation?" "I understand." Kale nodded. "Heroes are born in troubled times. It's precisely because of the conflict in World War II that capable people can ignore the accumulation of experience and background and quickly rise in rank. I like this kind of period." Kale's lips curled up slightly, his blue eyes filled with confidence. For the first time he felt lucky to have been reborn in Marvel during World War II. Colonel Marcus smiled and said, "Don't worry. After all, this is your first time leading an army, and it's such an important counterattack. I won't let you command by yourself." "That's good. I'm afraid that I'll mess it up." Kale breathed a sigh of relief. He now understood that the colonel was giving him an opportunity to train while launching a counterattack. Colonel Marcus shouted towards the outside of the tent, "Messenger, go and get Sergeant Fury." "Sergeant Fry?" Kale touched his chin. The name sounded familiar. After a while, a black officer walked into the tent. His left eye was still bandaged, but he was already wearing a full set of combat uniform and looked ready to go. "It's you, Sergeant," Kale said in surprise. Wasn't this the black sergeant he met during his first experience on the battlefield? Soldier Kale. No, it should be Corporal Kale. Sergeant Fry greeted him warmly and then saluted the colonel. "Sir, I'm Sergeant Fry. I've recovered and returned to the team. I can carry out all operations." "Very good." Colonel Marcus nodded and introduced him to Kale. "This is your partner tonight, Nick Fry. He has been a sergeant for some time and has a wealth of field command experience." Kale blinked. After hearing the black officer's name, he was stunned. "Nick Fry? The new director of SHELD in the 21st century? Thank you for taking care of me tonight." Sergeant Fry nodded at Kale. He didn't have the fierce and domineering aura he would have in the future. However, he still looked very young. He was only around 25 years old. "You're welcome." Kale calmed himself down. This was World War II. Let alone the director of SHELD. Even SHELD hadn't been established yet. However, to fight against the future director of SHELD? Chapter 11. Colonel Marcos looked at Kale and Fry and said, "Since you two know each other, I won't say anything else. Tonight, you two will be the leaders and lead 100 fully armed troops to the 5th Division. That is, the German Army's small intermediate battle zone. Remember, the 5th Division will launch a counterattack at the same time. Once you reach your destination, you must complete the mission within the allotted time." When Colonel Marcos said this, his eyes became as sharp as an eagle's. "You can only succeed. Failure is not an option." "Understood. We will complete the mission." Fry and Kale saluted solemnly, indicating that they had accepted the mission's instructions. "Corporal Kale, you can go back and rest first. Sergeant Fry, you must arrange for the troops to gather now. When the time is up tonight, the two of you will lead the troops and set off on time." Colonel Marcos handed over the mission brief and a small battle map to the two of them before letting Kale and Fry leave. "Kale, I'll see you tonight." Fry said goodbye to Kale as soon as he left the command tent. Although his left eye was still injured, he was very serious about the mission. After saying goodbye, he jogged to the temporary camp supplies area. Kale returned to his temporary tent. Humans were not made of iron. Although his body was at the top level among soldiers, he was still a little tired from the continuous battles. Lying in the uncomfortable bed, Kale closed his eyes and rested. His mind entered a huge space. Card space. It was as if he was in a dream. In a vast, boundless white cubic space, the hundreds and thousands of cards that he had accumulated on a daily basis were spinning like a hurricane. Although tonight's attack is very confident, I still can't be careless. I have to think of a way to increase my combat power. Kale's mental clone was in the center of the card storm, looking at the cards that constantly flew past in front of him. During those 3 days, his ability to draw cards had clearly improved even further. First of all, he had the ability to enter the card space with his mind. He could freely view and read the cards he had drawn and use the cards in simulation. Then he would obtain a card drawing ability called Sacrificial Draw. As the name suggested, the Sacrificial Card Draw was to choose any 10 item cards of the same color and grade from the inventory of one's card space. After the sacrifice, there was a high probability of drawing any card of the same color and a small probability of drawing any card beyond the first grade. Beyond the first level was equivalent to a qualitative leap from a white card to a green card. Up until now, Kale had yet to obtain a card that was higher than green, whether it was an ability card or an item card. What kind of card is beyond green? Kale was very curious. According to the positioning of the rare green card that he had come into contact with so far, if it was an ability type, then it had already reached the peak of the professional level. If it was an item, then it would be a valuable item. It was a card of a higher level than green. That ability card should be classified as a superpower. As for the item card, it could be considered a real black technology item. No matter which one it is, it will be of great help to me in my current situation, Kale muttered to himself. With a wave of his hands, he separated the ability cards and item cards in the card space. The next step was simple. Kale kept some items of combat value and collected most of the item cards that could be sacrificed. In the end, he summed up the results. Green item cards, 66 pieces. White item cards, 389 pieces. I still feel that it's not enough, but this is the result of my continuous back and forth between the battlefield and the drawing in secret for the past 3 days. Kale sighed, a little reluctant to go on with the next step. Sacrificial draw, you have sacrificed, assault rifle, military bulletproof vest, rifle cartridge, communicator. The 10 selected white item cards disappeared from the card space, and then a brand new white card appeared. Draw successful. Congratulations on obtaining life extension. Life extension card? Kale's heart skipped a beat. He quickly reached out to take the new white card and checked it. Life extension. Increases the user's natural lifespan by 3 months. Rare white ability card. Current status. Can be used on others. Increase my natural lifespan? How should I put it? It won't take effect if I'm killed, right? Kale could not hide his disappointment. This life extension card seemed to be different from what he had imagined. But it was only a rare white ability card. How could it achieve the godly effect of resurrection? But this ability card can be used on others. It's not a bad card. Who knows, maybe a higher level life-saving ability card could really bring the dead back to life. Kale thought optimistically and quickly continued with the sacrificial draw. I've been reborn as a European. Give me some luck. Draw successful. Congratulations on obtaining gentleman's suit. A single piece of clothing? Congratulations my ass. Kale's heart was bleeding, but his body was very honest. He continued with the sacrificial draw. Draw successful. Congratulations on obtaining stainless steel cup. This is too lousy. Continue with the sacrificial draw. Draw successful. Congratulations on obtaining Japanese basic proficiency. What's this? Draw again. Draw successful. Congratulations on obtaining Warring State saddle. What a loss. What a loss. 10 white item cards in exchange for this thing. Kale's thought incarnation's eyes were bloodshot. He stared at the cards like a gambler. He finally understood that the sacrificial draw allowed him to draw any card. The range of the word any was too wide. The things that could be drawn were not uniform. However, some item cards were useless. He might as well use the sacrificial draw and try his luck. Draw successful. Congratulations on obtaining bat. Bat? There are animals? Kale was slightly stunned. His gaze quickly fell on the new card that had appeared. Bat. Can summon an ordinary bat to fight for you. White creature card. Current status. Can be used continuously. Do you want to summon it? Creature card? Kale suddenly understood. He had obtained ability cards and item cards directly from the resources around him. This was the first time he had seen a third type of card. If there were a certain number of creature cards as support, wouldn't I be promoted to a summoner directly? Kale smiled and placed the bat card as a combat resource. He continued with the sacrificial draw until more than 300 unused white item cards were used up. Other than a bunch of foreign language cards and 3 rare white, add life, cards, there were only 2 creature cards, Bat and Shiba Inu, that were of practical value. After sacrificing more than 30 white cards, he did not get a single green card. The small probability of drawing a card that was beyond the first level was too small. Kale was helpless. He shifted his gaze to the 60 green item cards. Most of them were dug out from piles of corpses on the battlefield. It was not easy to get them. There were only 6 sacrificial draw chances left. If people die, then there's nothing left. Kale gritted his teeth and sacrificed all 60 green item cards at the same time. Sacrifice draw. Draw successful. Congratulations on obtaining Add Life, Luxurious Evening Gown, Poisonous Hornet's Nest, Nepal Army Knife, Street Parkour, Stealth. This is... Kale's eyes widened. Chapter 12. The sun set below the horizon, and after the red glow of the sunset dimmed in the sky, the night came as scheduled. After nightfall, the German army retreated peacefully in the war zone on the front line, just like a few days ago. At this time, the temporary U.S. military camp was quietly bustling with activity. Hundreds of young U.S. soldiers were dressed in combat uniforms, holding assault rifles in their hands, carrying military green backpacks filled with ammunition and supplies, and standing in a standard military formation. This was because the locations of the 5 German camps were different, so the gathering times of the 5 troops were not the same. Otherwise, the gathering of thousands of soldiers would definitely fill up the empty space in the temporary camp. Fry had already gathered the 100 men he was in charge of early and carefully explained to them the things to pay attention to in tonight's raid. I know that some of you are recruits who have just been transferred from the training base, so listen up and remember the things to pay attention to. Don't drag me down tonight. On the battlefield, if anyone flinches or disobeys orders, I won't use military court to warn them. I'll simply open a hole in their forehead. Fry, who was educating the soldiers, stood alone in front of the troops. Unlike the gentleness he had in the headquarters, his tanned face was cold, and his remaining right eye was as fierce and domineering as a wolf's. The hundreds of soldiers were silent. Among them, a young man at the back of the troops was standing steadily while looking left and right, as if he was looking for someone. A recruit who noticed this reminded him in a low voice, "George, this is not a training base. This is not a training ground. Don't be distracted." "I know," George replied in a low voice. "Have you seen Kale? He was sent to the front line a few days ago, and it's very likely that he's also in this temporary camp." The recruit muttered, "Kale? He might have died in battle long ago. No matter how good his physique is, the training base is completely different from the battlefield. I hope he can live up to his expectations. The battlefield is where my true talent is." George clenched his fists. His physique and talent were among the best among the recruits, but he had always been suppressed by Kale in the training base. "Who is it?" Frey's voice suddenly sounded, giving George a fright. He quickly regained his senses and looked over, only to realize that the sergeant wasn't talking about him. "It's me." Outside the area covered by the lights of the assembly space, a muscular man walked out of the darkness of the night and approached the troops. When the young and handsome face of the newcomer was revealed under the light, many of the recruits in the 100-man troop cried out in surprise. Some of them almost couldn't maintain their military posture. "Go. George widened his eyes in disbelief. With his strong self-esteem, how could he forget the young man who had appeared in front of everyone at this moment? In just a short week, he made all the professional instructors gasp in admiration. He broke all the individual combat records in the training base and refreshed all the shooting targets for pistols, rifles, sniper rifles, and rocket launchers. Even though Kale had gone to the front lines in advance, there were still rumors about him circulating in the training base. There was even an exaggerated trend of evolving into a legend. Even those bad-tempered instructors often used Kale as an example to reprimand the recruits. "Silence." Fry raised his voice. His sharp gaze swept across the crowd, and the noise in the 100-man troop quieted down. Kale didn't choose to carry a military backpack. Instead, he carried an assault rifle on his shoulder, a Nepalese army knife in a leather scabbard on his waist, and 2 small pistols on the left and right sides of his legs. He could be considered the lightest person in the troop on the field. He walked directly beside Fry and coldly faced the gazes of the soldiers. While the recruits in the troop were puzzled, Fry introduced with a straight face, "This is Corporal Kale. He is also one of the commanding officers in charge of tonight's operation. For tonight's ambush mission, all of you must listen to both of our orders. Do you understand?" "Understood." The soldiers replied in unison. Even if they were given 100 guts, they wouldn't dare to say, "No." "Corporal Kale." George was already dumbfounded when he saw Kale. Now that he heard his military rank, he couldn't help but lower his head in shame, afraid that Kale would recognize him. The recruit who was talking to George also felt like he had been slapped in the face. He muttered to himself, "I was wrong. Monster. As expected, he's a monster no matter where he goes." "It's about time to depart, right?" Kale asked Fry. In order to master the newly drawn card, he spent a lot of time and time to arrive at the right time. "Yes, it's time to depart." Fry lowered his head to look at the time displayed on the device in his hand. He waved at the 100-man troop, "All soldiers, listen up. Follow the military vehicle and jog towards the mission location." After Fry finished speaking, he and Kale got into the military vehicle that was idling in the air. The military vehicle with excellent off-road performance braked quickly and led the way towards the wilderness outside the combat camp. The ambush mission. They didn't directly cross the defensive line. Instead, they took a big detour in the wilderness to avoid the enemy's detection and directly turned towards the mountains and forests beside the wilderness. After arriving at the designated location, Fry and Kale abandoned the military vehicle and led the 100-man troop up the mountain. They groped their way through the dense forest in the dark. If they didn't know the exact location of the German camp, this detour would just be fooling around. However, under the premise that they had information, they could penetrate deep into the enemy's camp. After crossing this mountain, we'll be very close to the location of the small transit camp in the intelligence report. Soldiers, pass down the order. Everyone is to enter a state of alert. If you see the enemy, don't alarm them. Stay quiet and wait for orders. Kale, who was at the front of the troop, said coldly. Although it was his first time leading troops, he had a certain degree of confidence and dominance. Fry, who was beside him, suddenly frowned and said, "Kale, I feel that something isn't right." Kale looked at him in surprise. Fry used a small flashlight to shine weakly on the mission map and said solemnly, "Look at the map. After crossing this mountain, it's not very far from the battle zone. However, it's too far from the German camp. This location is not suitable as a transit station for the transportation of resources." "You think the information we received is fake?" Kale also frowned. "It's hard to say. Let's look forward. Even if it's fake, we can still retreat safely from this position." After Fry finished his analysis, the two continued to lead the soldiers over the mountain. When Kale and Fry, who were at the front of the troop, pushed aside the bushes blocking their view, the scene that directly entered their field of vision made the two of them freeze at the same time. At the bottom of the mountain, there was an iron fence that covered 100 meters of the wilderness in a circular shape. Every 10 meters there was a cannon as an outer wall fortress. There were lights everywhere in the iron fence, and a large number of German soldiers could be faintly seen patrolling back and forth. "My God, this is the small transit camp in the intelligence report?" Fry opened his mouth wide in shock and was speechless. "It seems that the location is correct. However, the target is attacking the camp and it's not quite what we imagined." Kale remained calm, but he had the urge to curse in his heart. Chapter 13. I think I'm starting to understand why. Kale looked at the enemy base at the foot of the mountain and judged, "The information we got from the sheepskin map, which is the location of the German camp, is true. But Nasurin left a trick in the secret signal." Fry said thoughtfully, "So that's how it is. They actually switched the size of the camp. That's right?" Kale nodded. Of the 5 enemy camps, only one was a large base, 3 were medium-sized camps, and 1 was a small transit camp. The German army had switched the secret signal of the large base and the small transit camp. It had to be said that they were very experienced. Fry smiled bitterly. "In other words, what we are facing now is the enemy base that the colonel was supposed to lead 5 troops to raid. And the target that the colonel is leading his troops to is the small camp that we should have taken care of." "It's useless to complain now," Kale said coldly. "Fry, you have more experience in combat than me. What do you think we should do in this situation?" Fry frowned and stared at the enemy base in the distance with his one eye. After thinking for a moment, he said unwillingly, "It's obvious that we can only give up on the raid mission. With a mere 100 troops, even if we have the initiative, we will undoubtedly die in vain. Kale continued to ask, can't we contact the colonel through the communication device we brought over? No. Fry shook his head and said without even thinking, we are too close to the enemy base. If we use the communication device at this distance, the signal will be easily intercepted by the enemy. Moreover, there is not much time left for the rest of the troops to launch the raid. Once the other 4 enemy camps are attacked by our troops, the large base here will receive the news. Kale said expressionlessly, so, using conventional combat judgment, we can only give up on the raid mission, right? Fry, have you forgotten? We promised the commander that we would complete the raid mission. But, Fry looked troubled. No buts. Kale interrupted him and continued to guide him. If we give up the opportunity to attack a large base now, it will be very difficult to find such an opportunity again when the enemy is alert. Fry seemed to have realized something as he looked at Kale in surprise. He said with a straight face, don't keep me in suspense. Do you have an idea? I still can't hide it from you, but this isn't an idea, it's a battle plan. Kale smiled faintly and leaned over to whisper a few words into Fray's ear. Fry stared at Kale as if he was looking at a madman. He trembled as he said, infiltrating the base alone? Are you crazy? Or do you want to die? Kale shrugged and said seriously, I'm not crazy. At this point, if he wanted to complete the mission, he could only take the risk and give it a try. If we can infiltrate the enemy base, destroy the defense mechanism inside, and launch a sneak attack from the outside, there is a certain chance of success. It's not that easy to infiltrate a large base like this. Fry shook his head and said, that's my problem. I just need your approval and support, Kale said coldly. Fry fell silent. He stared at Kale with his single eye for a while before speaking slowly and forcefully, to be honest, I have no reason to dissuade you. After all, no one wants to give up before the mission has even begun. You can give it a try, but I'll say this first. If you fail, I'll immediately retreat with my troops. Don't worry, I've never placed my life on someone else. Kale threw down these words and immediately charged forward. He used the slope to increase his speed, and his figure quickly disappeared into the night below the mountain. He really is a madman, Fry sighed. A single soldier heading directly to a large base was undoubtedly a suicidal act. However, for some reason, Kale gave him a feeling of complete confidence. Perhaps it was because of this strange feeling that made Fry agree to this extremely risky method of combat. After Kyle left the team, he first took off his American combat uniform in the jungle at the foot of the mountain. He then selected a suitable German soldier's combat uniform from the card space and changed into it. Of course, Kale wasn't going to die when he proposed to infiltrate the enemy base alone. He had enough confidence to protect himself. This confidence came from the blue card he had drawn from the sacrifice today. Stealth. Transform into a Nightwalker hiding in the shadows. Eliminate your presence and reduce your presence. Under stealth, the enemy will not be able to see you beyond a certain range of vision, 10 meters. You will be able to see translucent figures within 10 meters. Normal vision will only be available within 5 meters. In the night, provide the Nightwalker with night vision within 100 meters. Stealth effect is doubled and movement speed is increased. Note, after the Nightwalker initiates an attack, the stealth will be removed and cannot be entered for 10 seconds. The Nightwalker can forcibly teleport to escape within a range of 1 kilometer. Cooldown is 24 hours. Blue ability card. This was a blue quality ability card. As previously judged, it was far beyond the professional or proficient level that humans could reach. It could be classified as a superpower. After Kale had the stealth card, the individual strength that he could now exert could no longer be defined as a human's ability. Stealth begins. Kale muttered in his heart. His eyes began to turn dark red, and his vision within 100 meters became clear. At the same time, his body seemed to be wrapped in a cloud of fog, faintly discernible in the night. Under the Nightwalker state, Kale held the Nepalese army knife in his hand and jogged toward the enemy base half a mile away. When he entered stealth, even the sound of his military boots hitting the ground could not be heard. Safely approaching the enemy base, Kale suddenly stopped and looked at it from 50 meters away. Rows of lights hung high on the iron fence wall. Once one's figure was exposed under the lights, the enhancement of stealth would be greatly reduced. Kale was still thinking about how to sneak into the base when suddenly, from 100 meters behind him, 2 beams of light broke through the darkness of the wilderness. A German-style military vehicle was slowly driving toward the main gate of the base. A military supply vehicle? Kale's heart skipped a beat. He maintained his stealth state and crept toward the military vehicle. Thud, thud, thud. Light but frequent footsteps could be heard on the desolate plain. Kale sneaked to the front of the military vehicle. Seeing that the front of the vehicle was about to crash into him, he directly dashed forward, exposing himself. Whoa! The German soldier who was driving the vehicle was taking a nap. Suddenly he saw a figure dashing out from the front of the empty vehicle. He was so frightened that all his hair stood on end. He instinctively stepped on the brakes. He opened his mouth wide, but before he could say anything, a flash of light from a sword came from outside the window, instantly erasing his words and life. Stealth, assassination, dumping the corpse. The whole process was smooth as flowing water, as if it had been rehearsed many times. The military vehicle stopped as the engine turned off. Kale coldly threw the German soldier who had his throat slit out of the driver's seat. It was a little like killing monsters to drop equipment in online games. A few item cards that could be drawn from the corpse on the ground appeared. German soldier's ID, German soldier's combat suit, German pistol. After a while. Chapter 14. In a large German base. The 3-meter high-speed rail network surrounded the large base like a bucket. As the only gate that was not protected by the iron fence, there was also a fort and nearly 30 well-equipped German soldiers guarding it. It was late at night and many of the guards were yawning. At this moment, the sound of an engine came, and a German military vehicle drove toward the main gate from a distance. Stop, stop. Even though they saw that it was their own car, the guards still put down the car barricade at the main gate and stopped the military vehicle. What's the situation? The bearded guard captain led a group of armed soldiers forward and knocked on the window to ask. The window of the military vehicle quickly rolled down, and the driver wearing a flat leather hat handed over the soldier's ID. He tiredly replied in German with a hoarse voice, military supplies. Routine inspection. The guard captain waved his hand, and 3 or 4 soldiers immediately stepped forward to inspect the supplies in the back of the vehicle. After a short while, those soldiers returned to the guard captain's side in a slight panic and whispered a few words in his ear. Sensing that the guard captain's gaze had returned to him, Kale, who was pretending to be the driver, raised his eyebrows. He subconsciously lowered the brim of his hat, and the shadow covered most of his young face. Was he exposed? Kale's face was expressionless, but his body was secretly in a tense state. As long as the German guards noticed his identity, he would immediately use the forced teleportation that came with stealth to escape. The guard captain waved his hand and told the soldiers to step back, and he went forward alone to the window of the military vehicle. Just as Kale was secretly on guard, the guard captain's serious face suddenly revealed a smile. He happily took out a rolled cigarette from his pocket and handed it over. Brother, it's so late and you're still helping your superior with the mission. It's really hard on you. Kale naturally took the cigarette and coldly replied, You're welcome. This is what I should do. Okay. Hurry up and let us in. The guard captain shouted, and the car barricade at the main gate of the base immediately opened. Kale did not hesitate. His right foot stepped on the gas and the military vehicle roared into the base. The inside of the large base was not as simple as a temporary combat territory, especially the German base that was famous for its strict military law. There was a lane that could allow 2 vehicles to pass side by side, and there were all kinds of wooden or tent-built camp houses on both sides. Even inside the base there were lights at regular intervals, and a patrol team of 6 German soldiers was patrolling. Kale used the corner of his eyes to observe the distribution of the patrolling team as he drove the car deep into the base, which was the warehouse area where a large number of vehicles were parked. The warehouse area of the warehouse was quiet and empty. Kale took the opportunity to stop the car. He was not in stealth and walked directly to the back of the vehicle. I was too careless just now. I forgot to check what the military vehicles were transporting. To be able to make the guard captain of the base give me a cigarette as a compliment? Kyle muttered to himself. The card-like Nepal army knife was already quietly held in his right hand, while the other hand pulled down the iron gate of the rear compartment. Creak! The metal door at the back of the car opened, and at the same time, a faint whimper came from inside. This is? Kale frowned and jumped into the back of the warehouse. The dark vision inside gradually became clear. The so-called military asset was a girl. Yes. It was a white girl who looked only about 16 years old. Her bright blonde curly hair was wet with sweat. Even in the dim light, it was difficult to hide her delicate porcelain doll-like face. She was only wearing a thin white dress, and her immature figure was already showing off. Her entire body was tied up with military ropes and her mouth was taped. She was curled up and placed in a large wooden box. There was a white label on the big wooden box and on it was written in German, "The European Land Base's Goods, Officer Leo." These bastards. Seeing this, Cale gritted his teeth, and an uncontrollable anger surged in his heart. Although he did not hate war, he had never been interested in this kind of evil behavior that invaded the homeland and robbed girls as goods. The blonde girl in the box saw someone come in, and her beautiful blue eyes were filled with tears and panic. Because her mouth was covered with tape, she could not speak. She could only make a struggling sound. "Don't be afraid," Cale said and approached, but the girl showed more panic and fear. Cale suddenly realized something, smiled bitterly and changed his words back to authentic English. "Don't worry. I'm an American soldier, I won't hurt you." Worried that this was not enough, Cale took off his hat, revealing his young and handsome European face. This time the girl finally calmed down. Sure enough, no matter what era it was the era of appearance. "Don't make a sound, I'll get you out." Cale lifted the Nepalese army knife and cut the rope on the girl. When he tore off the tape, the blonde girl could no longer hold back and hugged his waist, crying weakly. "You're safe," Cale said with a smile, comforting the girl's beautiful blonde hair. Suddenly, a question in German sounded outside the car. "Who's in there?" The girl in Cale's arms stopped crying, and her whole body trembled. "Don't make a sound, I'll deal with them," Cale said in a low voice and then raised his head. The gentleness on his face quickly turned into indifference, and coldness condensed in his eyes. He answered in a hoarse German, "I'm Bern. There are supplies in the car for Officer Leo, can you come and help carry them?" "Understood." The patrol team leader outside the car did not suspect anything. After a quick response, he approached the back of the military vehicle with 5 soldiers. The patrol team leader and 2 soldiers entered the back of the car first. When the flashlight in their hands shone in, they only saw the blonde girl curled up and shivering in the box alone. The patrol team leader's puzzled voice had just faded when a figure suddenly rolled down from the roof of the back of the car. Pucci. The Nepalese army knife cut through the air in the dark, fast, accurate and sharp. The blade swept across the throats of the 3 people on the back of the car, accompanied by the splashing of warm scarlet blood. After killing the 3 soldiers in the car in an instant, Cale did not even gasp for breath. Like a cheetah full of murderous intent, he leaped and rushed toward the other 3 soldiers outside the car. The distance of 4 to 5 meters was covered in less than half a second under the explosive attack of a human's top physique. Cale raised the knife in his hand, and the 4th German soldier's head flew high into the air. The sharp army knife, coupled with the powerful force of the bowl, actually cut off the neck and cervical vertebrae directly. The other 2 German soldiers widened their eyes. Extreme fear slowed down their body's reaction by a lot. They wanted to fight back with their guns, they wanted to open their mouths and shout, they wanted to run, but all of these were limited to thoughts. Their real actions were simply wiped out in the next moment. Cale stabbed the army knife directly into the heart of one of the soldiers, and the other arm fiercely clamped the last soldier's neck, forcefully grinding it against the ground. Die. Chapter 15. Drip. Thick blood dripped down the slightly curved blade of the Nepalese army knife to the ground. The bodies of the 6 German soldiers fell from the back of the car to the outside of the car, one after the other. Phew. Cale let out a long breath. His heart was still beating in a state of excitement. Adrenaline and blood flowed through his body, and a large amount of sweat appeared on his forehead. In order to prevent even one German soldier from sounding the alarm and alerting the enemy in the base, in these 5 seconds of killing, Cale had already used his body's strong physique and the ability cards of many fighting skills to the extreme. Cale didn't dare to slack off. He hurriedly looked around to make sure that he didn't alert the other German soldiers. He simply wiped the Nepalese army knife on the clothes of a corpse, cleaned the blood on the knife, and put it back into the leather scabbard at his waist. Then Cale moved the bodies of the 3 soldiers outside the car to the back of the car. During the process of moving, the girl he saved poked her head out of the wooden box. The blonde girl looked at the 6 stacked bodies in front of her. The fear from before had disappeared. Her eyes shifted to the unscathed Cale, and shock appeared in her big eyes. German soldiers. They were brave and warlike, well-equipped and strict military discipline. In the eyes of the civilians, every one of them was a killing machine. But these 6 powerful soldiers all fell under the young man's army knife in a short period of time. They didn't even have a chance to call for help. If she didn't see it with her own eyes, Who would dare to believe such a luxurious battle record? That. The girl gathered her strength and said softly to Kale, "Thank you." Kale shrugged and said while panting, "It's too early to thank me. We're in a large German base." The girl was slightly stunned. Clearly, she didn't understand the current situation. "I don't have time to explain it to you. Just hide here and don't make a sound. I'll come back to get you out later." After Kale finished speaking, he immediately left the back of the car and closed the iron door at the back of the car. Although it wasn't good to lock a beautiful girl with 6 corpses, he couldn't care less now. In order to sneak into the base, he had wasted some time. Now, there were only about 20 minutes left before the planned attack time of the raid mission. When the time came, even if their troops did not take action, the other 4 troops would attack the other 4 enemy camps. At that time, the large bases here would be alerted, and the so-called surprise attack would be meaningless. Stealth begins. With his military knife in hand, Kale activated stealth and entered Nightwalker mode. He then headed straight for the house inside the base. Thud thud thud. Stealthily he ran past a patrol 5 meters away from them. Not a single soldier noticed him. There were lights and patrols in the base every short distance, but as long as they weren't brightly lit and filled with soldiers, and there was room for darkness at night, Kyle could quietly wander around the base without making a sound. In the darkness, if one had a good grasp of the surrounding environment, the effect of stealth would far surpass that of invisibility. Kale moved stealthily and soon stopped in front of a wooden house. The biggest difference between the house in front of him and the other houses was that the patrols in the surrounding area were more than twice as strong. There was also a soldier guarding the door. Is this the officer's resting place? The command center? Kale was surprised. The door was not locked but was left ajar. If he could get rid of the commander of the base first, then his plan to sneak in alone would be considered half successful. The problem was how to sneak into the house in front of him. Kyle frowned. Suddenly he thought of something and a smile appeared on his face. In front of the huge house, the soldier guarding the door stood by the door like a big white poplar tree. He held his gun motionlessly and maintained a high level of vigilance. Even if this was his own base, there was no exception. Because the things stored in the house were things that the officer had repeatedly ensured were not neglected. Another hour and someone will take over. Just as the guard was thinking, a black creature suddenly fell from the sky and flapped its wings, hitting his face. A bat? The guard was stunned and reached out to catch it. He hadn't thought the bat would be so aggressive. It bit the corner of his eye and wouldn't let go no matter what. "Get out of my way." The guard closed his eyes in pain and fell back against the door. He angrily tried to grab the bat with both hands. While he was defending, a blurry figure quickly passed by his side and passed the door of the house. "What's going on?" A small patrol team quickly rushed to the scene to inquire, only to see the guard angrily throw the bat to the ground and spit. "Bah, nothing. It's just a bat." Seeing that funny scene, the small patrol team looked at each other. The door of the house was closed by the guard, and a clear silhouette gradually appeared in the darkness inside. It was Kale, who was still in stealth mode. "The biological card is much more practical than I thought," Kale muttered to himself. It was only a white biological card, but it played a huge role in that kind of situation. It also benefited from the biological card's inherent characteristic, obedience. The creatures summoned from the biological card could obey the master's orders, which prevented a lot of accidents and made it a real biological weapon. "Okay, let me see what this place is for." Kale's gaze fell on the hall of the house. The moment he entered, he knew that it wasn't a command center or a rest area. It leaned toward the layout of a material storage warehouse. In the huge house, there were several rows of shelves and boxes of various sizes stacked together. There was no need to open the boxes to check. As Kale focused his attention, a series of information about the item cards that could be extracted appeared on each box. German rifle, rifle bullets, anti-infantry grenade, grenade detonator, armory? Kale's eyes lit up. This was much higher priority than the command center. After all, finding the command center could only threaten the commander's life. Finding this meant that the lifeline of the large base was in his hands. Kale walked into the house and extracted some firearms into cards at a frequency of once every 3 seconds. He went all the way to the innermost part of the house and suddenly stopped. He squatted on the floor and knocked a few times with his fingers. Dong dong dong. A subtle hollow sound was heard. "Turtle, there's a hidden basement under the arsenal?" Kale smiled slightly. This little trick couldn't be hidden from him. Soon he found the basement floor and went down the stairs. However, the basement that he thought was pitch black was faintly glowing with a mysterious blue light. Chapter 16. Rubik's Cube. A new energy source developed through the Rubik's Cube. It can supply tanks and guns with amazing destructive power. It is a concept of infinite energy. Blue item card. Do you want to draw? That was the card information displayed by the blue light energy body in the shape of a square. My God. Kale's face was full of shock. His usually calm state of mind couldn't help but waver. He didn't expect to come into contact with a god-level item from the Marvel world so soon. The Rubik's Cube. A veritable god-level item, the container of the space gem that first appeared on Earth. And the space gem, one of the 6 infinity gems, was a cosmic artifact. That's true. During World War II, the Rubik's Cube was found by the German Chancellor, Schindler, and he used it to develop and produce infinite energy for use in the war. Kale looked at the energy cube in front of him and was shocked. He wiped cold sweat for himself and the U.S. Army in the temporary war zone. To this day, this energy source has not been used in the frontline battlefield. Obviously, the German army had just made it not long ago and had not officially put it into use. If they didn't know this news, facing the German army that suddenly had new energy sources, it was likely that the front line in Europe would be destroyed. But now, it just so happened to be convenient for me. Kale picked up a piece of energy cube with a little excitement. One of them could be used as a blue item card. This kind of high-quality item was simply the best material for the sacrifice draw. This box, there should be more than 20 pieces, right? Kale was about to draw the card when a slight sound suddenly came from behind him. His face changed, and before he could react, the back of his head was pressed against a cold metal object. Don't move, I'll blow your head off if you move. The man with the gun behind him spoke in German. With a mechanical click, the safety of the pistol had been released. I was careless. Kale's body tensed and he sighed in his heart. He didn't expect to let his guard down when he drew the card, and he didn't expect that there was someone in this hidden basement. Put the thing in your hand back and raise your hands. The man continued to speak in a commanding tone. Don't shoot. As Kale spoke, he put the energy cube in his hand back into the box and raised his hands. In this life and death crisis, Kale was calmly thinking of countermeasures. The simplest method was to directly use stealth to forcefully move away from the enemy base, but this was the last resort. Very good. I didn't expect you to be able to speak German. No wonder you're an American rat that can infiltrate my base. The man said coldly. He didn't intend to shoot immediately. This made Kale eliminate the idea of forcibly moving. What do you want to do by sneaking into this place? The man continued to ask. This time, Kale remained silent and did not answer. I will find a way to make you talk. The man harumphed coldly. His handgun remained pressed against the back of Kale's head while his other hand pulled out a walkie-talkie. Hello, this is Officer Leo. Hurry up and send soldiers to the basement of warehouse number 2. There's an American rat here. It turned out that this guy was Officer Leo, who had asked people to provide the girl with supplies. He should also be the supreme commander of this large base. Kale remained motionless with his hands raised high, but at some point, a card had quietly materialized between his fingers. Officer Leo. Without waiting for the man behind him to finish the call, Kale suddenly said coldly, Do you know that there's a saying in my hometown? Officer Leo was slightly taken aback. He hung up the walkie-talkie and asked coldly, What saying? His handgun was pressed tightly against the back of Kale's head. As long as there was any movement, he would immediately pull the trigger. Kale replied softly, That saying is, villains die because they talk too much. Villains? Officer Leo frowned. Before he could understand the meaning of this sentence, a vicious dog suddenly emerged from the darkness. Its ferocious fangs flashed with cold light, and it fiercely bit his wrist that was holding the gun. Vicious dog. Summons a ferocious vicious dog with rabies to fight for you. Green creature card. Officer Leo fell to the ground holding his hand and howling. The vicious dog seemed to be a large type of Tibetan Mastiff. Its eyes glowed green, and its amazing bite force tore a large piece of flesh off his wrist, revealing the eerie white bone. Tonight's main character is me. Of course you're the villain. The corner of Kale's mouth curled up as he stroked the vicious dog's fluffy fur. Please don't kill me. You can't leave here alive even if you kill me. Under the strong desire to survive, the dignified and iron-blooded Officer Leo begged for mercy. Don't worry. I won't kill you, Kale said with a smile. Officer Leo's face didn't have time to show joy before the next sentence made him pale. I hate it when people put a gun to my head. So you can just feed it to the dog. As soon as he said that, as if it understood Kale's instructions, the vicious dog next to him roared and pounced, biting Officer Leo's neck directly. Ignoring the man's screams and the hellish scene of the vicious dog gnawing on a human body, Kale began to extract the energy cube in the basement. After all, even if he did it once every 3 seconds, it would take more than a minute to extract more than 20 energy cubes. And after receiving the communication call from the commander, the German soldiers in the base should have gathered here. In 1 minute, we must destroy the base's defense mechanism and break out of the enemy base. Time is a bit tight. Kale raised his eyebrows, but he didn't stop extracting the energy item card. Instead, he took out another creature card from the card space. Poisonous Hornet's Nest. Summons a beehive with hundreds of hornets. The hornets are highly poisonous and can kill within half an hour. Rare green item card current status. One-time summon, lasts for half an hour. Do you want to use it? This is when you'll be most useful, Kale said meaningfully. At this time in the forest beside the large base, hundreds of American soldiers hid with serious faces. The leader, Sergeant Fry, couldn't hold it in. He clenched his fists and anxiously waited for something. Officer Fry, the designated time for the surprise attack is almost up. What should we do? George couldn't help but ask. Wait a little longer, Fry said in a low voice. Even he didn't know what to wait for. Maybe Kale would be killed before he could sneak into the base. Even if Kale was lucky enough to sneak into the base, with his ability, how could he destroy the defense mechanism made up of thousands of soldiers and excellent equipment? Wait for 5 more minutes. If there's still no movement in the large base after 5 minutes, immediately cancel the mission and return. Fry took a deep breath. At this time, many soldiers around him exclaimed. Chapter 17. In front of warehouse number 2 of the German army's large base. Nearly 100 German soldiers, armed with excellent German-made rifles, surrounded the empty space in front of the warehouse with serious expressions. The commotion caused even more patrolling soldiers to gather. We can't contact Officer Leo. I repeat, we can't contact Officer Leo through the walkie-talkie. Sir, should we force our way into the warehouse to search? Of course. The opponent may only be one person. There's no reason to be afraid of him in our territory. But be careful. The warehouse is filled with highly flammable ammunition and supplies. Don't misfire. If you see the enemy, use your bayonet to suppress him. After the officer in charge of the base's patrol finished speaking, he waved his hand and signaled for the 2 soldiers who were close to the warehouse door to open it. The warehouse door was slowly pushed open by the soldiers. It was pitch black inside. A few patrol squads quickly entered with guns in hand. The lights on their helmets shone beams of light into the warehouse, sweeping left and right. Tap, tap, tap. Hearing the frequent footsteps from above, Kale knew that the enemy soldiers had broken into the ammunition warehouse. Coincidentally, he had just extracted the last energy cube from the box and turned it into a card. A total of 25 energy cubes, which were 25 blue item cards, were all in his hands. Now let's break through. Kale calmly glanced at the enemy commander who had already turned into a pile of rotten meat. He turned the evil dog with its tongue hanging out beside him back into a card. The following situation was not suitable for it. However, ordinary creature cards could be recycled, except for special creature cards like the poisonous hornet's nest. This greatly increased the value of the creature cards. I wonder what a creature card of green quality and above will be like. Could it be that I'll draw a monster card like a creature from another world, King Kong or Godzilla? This funny thought only flashed through Kale's mind. He quickly left it behind and left the basement, preparing to break through. He didn't know that this would become a reality in the near future. At this time, a large number of German soldiers had already finished searching the upper level of warehouse number 2. Their target was the last passage to the basement. Throw a smoke grenade in. One of the soldiers held the prepared smoke grenade in his hand, while the other soldier placed his hand on the door of the hidden basement. Just as they opened the door to the basement and were about to throw in the smoke grenade, a cloud of black smoke rushed out of the basement first, causing the open smoke grenade to fall outside the basement. Cough cough, what the hell is this? One of the German soldiers coughed and aimed his flashlight at the black fog. When the patrolling team saw what was in front of them, they all gasped in shock, and their faces turned pale with fright. It was clearly not a black fog but hundreds of dark brown wasps. Each of them was half the size of a marble, and they were densely packed together. Hornet! There are poisonous bees in there. Oh my god! Leave this place. The German soldiers in the warehouse rushed out in horror, hoping that they hadn't disturbed the wasps. However, after the poisonous wasps left the basement, they seemed to be organized and purposeful. They chased after the soldiers crazily and used their stingers to attack the soldiers' unguarded faces. In just a short moment, dozens of soldiers fled out of the warehouse in defeat. Many of the soldiers who were stung by the wasps fell to the ground in pain, holding their faces and rolling around in pain. Kale came out of the basement behind the wasps. When he saw the scene in front of him, he whispered to himself, "It's just a rare green creature card. This is really powerful. But the mission's time is up. I don't have time to play with you. I have to leave here as soon as possible." Ignoring the German soldiers, Kale held the Nepalese army knife in his hand, and his body quickly disappeared in the darkness. Stealth activated. Kale, who was in the Nightwalker state, took advantage of the chaos inside and outside the warehouse to nimbly weave through the wasps and soldiers. He began to return to the area where the military vehicle was parked. Due to the bustling scene in warehouse number 2, which was in the center of the base, there were not many patrol teams in the parking lot outside the base. Kale ran stealthily without any obstruction and easily returned to the military vehicle that he had taken from the enemy. He opened the metal door of the back of the car and saw that there were only 6 corpses inside. He quickly jumped into the back of the car. When he found the girl sleeping in the wooden box, he breathed a sigh of relief. "Don't sleep. Hurry up and get up. I'll take you out of here." Kale went forward and pushed her, but the girl didn't wake up. Instead, her weak body completely collapsed. Dead. Kale put his finger under the girl's nose. He could still feel weak breathing, which proved that she hadn't died yet. She was just weak and unconscious. But in this situation, bringing an unconscious person with him would be much more dangerous. Kale hesitated for a moment and finally gritted his teeth. "You're lucky to have met me. Since I said I'll take you out of here then?" He carried the young girl on his back and used a rope to tie her to his back. The young girl's body was soft, like a high-quality quilt. "This weight is not even as heavy as a package." Kale complained with the girl on his back and turned to leave the back of the car that reeked of blood. But just as his front foot reached the edge of the back of the car, he quickly retreated and closed the metal door of the car. Da-da-da. In the next moment, the metal door of the back of the car was riddled with bullets. Kale, who was leaning against the metal wall of the back of the car, frowned. There were 3 or 4 patrol teams outside the car. This combat quality was worthy of the German army. "I can't be trapped here until I die," Kale thought. He quickly lifted one of the corpses in the car and kicked the metal door half open. He then threw the corpse in his hand out. Da-da-da. The German soldiers mistook the corpse for an enemy who had escaped. They immediately fired fiercely, and the corpse was smashed into pieces in the air. This was only the beginning. Soon, the second corpse was thrown out, and the German soldiers focused their fire on it again. As if not giving the German soldiers a chance to reload, the third corpse was thrown out right after. This time, the number of bullets that fell on the corpse was reduced by more than half. The moment the corpse was about to hit the ground, a figure suddenly sprinted out from behind the corpse and fled in the opposite direction. It was Kale. Chapter 18. But Kale was running at full speed with the girl on his back. He weaved between the various military vehicles and sprinted towards the barbed wire fence at the edge of the base. Chase after him. Don't let him get away. Behind him, more than 20 German soldiers were chasing after him with guns. All the bullets landed on the vehicle's cover. Kale's body was already tall and strong after he had collected the physique ability card. In addition, the girl's body was very petite, so it looked like he was carrying a doll-like backpack. It did not affect his movements at all. After dodging a wave of bullets, Kale crouched behind an off-road vehicle. At this moment, the girl behind him let out a groan and woke up from her unconscious state. What is going on?" The girl felt something was wrong as soon as she opened her eyes. She was clearly tied up with ropes like before, but this time she was tied up with a muscular man. Her legs and hands were separated, and her chest and crotch were completely unprotected. She was shamefully attached to the man's back like an octopus. "You're awake," Kale responded while panting. Under the continuous high-load battle, his entire body was sweating. His combat uniform was already soaked with sweat, so the two of them could almost feel each other's body temperature. "What are we doing now?" The girl who recognized Kale asked weakly with red ears. "We're running for our lives." As Kale spoke, he felt a sharp pain in his left shoulder. Wet and sticky liquid flowed out of his combat uniform and dyed his palm red. The girl said in shock, You're injured. It's just a small injury, Cale replied in a low voice. The injury should have been from when he was rushing out of the back of the vehicle. He did not notice it because his body was tense and excited. What should we do? The girl's trembling voice was laced with tears. She could only reach out to press on Cale's injured left shoulder to prevent the blood from flowing out. Don't worry, with my body it's not. Before Cale could finish his words, he suddenly jumped to the empty space behind him. The next moment, the ground was charred black by a grenade. Even half of the SUV's rear was blown up. Looks like they're a little angry. They're actually willing to destroy the military vehicles and supplies in the base to kill us. Cale calmly pondered. His injury did not slow down his movements. With a few more nimble sprints and leaps, he used the military vehicle as cover to avoid a few waves of bullets and continued to break out of the encirclement. What should we do? The young girl's face was pale. Only now did she notice the danger they were in. Don't worry, I promise to get you out of here. I don't intend to go back on my word. Cale looked back and estimated the distance between him and warehouse number 2. A few bullets whizzed past his head and hit the car next to him. Cale suddenly laughed. We should be far enough away from the center of the base. You're still smiling in this situation. The young girl bit her lips, feeling wronged. Her delicate hands were still pressing on the wound on Cale's left shoulder. But even so, blood continued to flow from the gaps between her fingers. Have you seen fireworks before? Cale asked in confusion. The young girl's face was full of confusion. She only saw Cale's right hand fumbling in his pocket and grabbing an object that looked like a remote control. This is the grand fireworks in the middle of a war. After Cale finished speaking, he pressed the button on the remote control in his hand. At the same time, outside warehouse number 2 of the German base, a large number of German soldiers gathered here. The corpses of hornets and soldiers, smoke bombs, guns and helmets were everywhere. The ground was a mess. Many soldiers who escaped the disaster sat on the ground helplessly. They dared to attack the well-equipped U.S. military, but they were helpless against the poisonous hornets that came out of nowhere. They could have used flamethrowers, but the combat area was a munitions warehouse, so they could not use them. They could only rely on smoke bombs to drive them away. But those hornets would stab you even if they died, exchanging life for life. Officer Leo's body has been found in the basement of the warehouse. No traces of the intruders have been found. Many soldiers came out of warehouse number 2 to report. The officers also looked at each other. The base had been inexplicably invaded and damaged, and they did not have time to react. Damn it. Increase the number of soldiers and conduct a carpet search of the entire base, the second officer said angrily. Just then, a soldier rushed out of warehouse number 2 in a panic and shouted, "Run, run!" What's wrong now? The officers asked in unison. Someone installed a time bomb inside. The soldier paused for a moment and then, there was no then. The time bomb corresponding to the remote control would be activated immediately under remote control. Cale had already installed the time bomb when he sneaked into the warehouse. It was not a powerful bomb, but its power was just enough to affect the entire building. And the building was a munitions warehouse that stored a large amount of ammunition. Boom. First, there was a shocking explosion followed by a series of overlapping explosions. The power of the explosion soared. From the perspective of Cale, who was at the edge of the large base, the glaring explosion instantly enveloped the entire central area of the base. The dust and air waves raised by the explosion swept out at a speed visible to the naked eye. Cale carried the girl and got under the car first. With a buzz, the air waves even hurt his eardrums. The window glass was shattered by the flying debris. When the dust settled, Cale climbed up from under the broken car. He and the girl looked behind them and saw that the entire central area of the base had been blasted flat. The flames burned fiercely, almost burning the night sky red. The grand fireworks display during a time of war lived up to its name. The 20 or so German soldiers who were chasing after them looked back at the scene in a daze. Their faces were full of disbelief. Some of them knelt on the spot and wailed in grief. "Let's take this opportunity and go." Cale breathed heavily. He took a few steps out with the girl on his back. Suddenly he staggered and almost fell to the ground. His strength began to fade, his bodily functions were deteriorating, and his consciousness and vision were gradually blurring. "What happened to you?" the girl asked worriedly. In her opinion, it was already incredible that Cale could last until now with the amount of blood he had lost after being shot. "I'm fine." Cale bit the tip of his tongue. The sharp pain stimulated his nerves, and he pulled himself together and slowly moved toward the metal fence 10 meters away. Damn it, there they are. Avenge our brothers. We can't let them go. Not far behind them, the surviving German soldiers cursed and continued to chase after Kale and the girl. If this continues, they will catch up to us. Untie the rope and put me down. I will stop them, the girl said with determination. Cut the crap. With your small body, you won't even be able to delay them for half a second. Kale smiled bitterly, but in his heart he was thinking about the choice at the moment. If life and death were on the line, he could only abandon the girl and choose to use stealth to forcibly teleport away. But now, was he in a desperate situation where life and death were on the line? Kale sighed. His body's condition was still deteriorating. If he did not receive treatment soon, his life would be in danger. Then, Kale was about to say something when a large group of familiar figures suddenly appeared in front of him. His eyes widened. This is, avoid the two at the front and shoot behind you. Kill them all. The black leader of the group said coldly. Da-da-da. Dense gunshots rang out, but they all avoided Kale's body and shot at the German soldiers chasing after him. With the absolute difference in numbers, the 20 or so German soldiers were quickly annihilated on the spot. You're finally here, Fry? Kale smiled with relief. The moment he saw Fry appear, he knew that the life and death crisis had been completely resolved. Chapter 19. Kale was at the end of the raid. Due to the massive blood loss from being shot and the long period of continuous combat, he had long exceeded the limits of his body. After relaxing, he quickly fainted. Fry asked a few soldiers to bring Kale and the rescued girl back to the temporary camp for emergency treatment, while he led the remaining 90 soldiers to continue the raid. Due to the large-scale explosion caused by Kale, the large base's defensive mechanisms and organizational systems had long been riddled with holes. Hundreds of surviving German soldiers had lost the command of their commanding officer. They had wanted to rescue the injured soldiers in the explosion area, but at this time, they were suddenly attacked by a fully armed and in good condition American troops. They were immediately defeated. The war lasted from late at night to 5 in the morning. The sky was white and Fry led the troops to clean up the large base. Even though it was a one-sided battle, they still lost 27 soldiers. But the results were heaven-defying. Coupled with Kale's personal achievements, their troops had wiped out about 1,200 German soldiers in the raid mission and completely occupied the other side's large military base. This was the first time that the American troops had achieved such a magnificent result in a battle. Of course, Kale didn't know any of this. He had been unconscious for a whole week. When he woke up, it was already the morning of the 8th day. Kale opened his eyes and found himself lying on a large white hospital bed. His left shoulder was completely bandaged to his waist, and his wrist was connected to an infusion tube. In addition, various medical instruments were connected to his naked upper body. It was just a shot. Was it that bad? Kale smiled bitterly. He also realized that he had been unconscious for a long time. After all, during the period of unconsciousness, his mind was trapped in the card space. But now he felt very energetic. His body should have recovered by about 70 to 80%. Pulling the infusion tube and the instruments apart, Kale pressed the wound on his left shoulder with his hand. He could still feel a faint pain, but his back comfortably leaned against the headboard. The tables on both sides of the bed were filled with flowers and fruits. A breeze blew the gauze curtains. Through the window he could see the blue sky and the forest. The environment outside was very quiet and peaceful. Where am I being transported to? Kale was confused. This was clearly not the frontline war zone or the training base. But who cares, it doesn't matter where it is. Anyway, I'm still alive and healthy. Kyle, who had an amazing ability to accept food, felt a little hungry. He immediately picked up the apple on the table and stuffed it into his mouth. He crunched it into his stomach to alleviate the hunger that surged up in his heart. When Kale picked up the third apple, the door to the ward was suddenly opened. He bit the apple in his hand and looked up instinctively. He couldn't help but be stunned by what he saw. What appeared in front of Kale was an angelic, exquisite face. Her large eyes were blue and clear, her lips were pink and tender, and her bright golden hair was slightly curled and draped over her shoulders. The young girl was wearing a sky-blue knee-length dress. Her immature body outlined a graceful curve, and her exposed arms were slender and fair. This was the second top European beauty that Kale had seen since his rebirth. The first was Carter from the training base. However, Carter gave people a mature and cold beauty charm, while the young girl in front of him was more of a cute and moving beauty. The young girl saw Kale biting the apple and was slightly stunned. Then, like a rabbit, she excitedly shouted outside the door, "Doctor, doctor! Kale is awake. So it's her. Kale was stunned. Hearing this familiar voice, he recognized that the young girl was the one that he rescued from the German base. It was really too dark at that time and he couldn't see clearly. Plus, the young girl's face was pale and her body was tied up very badly. Compared to now, she was like a completely different person. Hey, you can't eat the apple like this. You have to peel it. After the young girl informed the doctor, she quickly returned to the ward and snatched half of the apple from Kale's hand. Why are you here? Kale just opened his mouth and realized that he asked the wrong question. He quickly changed his words and asked, "Well, where am I?" The young girl replied, "We are in the United States' first military hospital in New York. You were in the temporary base at the front line for emergency treatment. After your condition stabilized, you were sent here by helicopter for rehabilitation." So that's how it is. Kale nodded thoughtfully. You don't know. That bullet didn't just hit your left shoulder. It was only a few centimeters away from your heart. I was really scared during the emergency treatment. Fortunately, your body is very strong and superior. The young girl said as she approached Kale and reached out to adjust his white bandage. What are you doing? Kale looked at her in surprise. At this distance, he could faintly smell the fragrance of her blonde hair. Helping you change the bandage. My parents are both doctors and nurses. I'm still very good at this kind of small thing. The young girl said this and a sad expression appeared on her face. Kale naturally understood. Since she was a captive, her family and friends in the area should have been shot by the invading German army. Sensing the tense atmosphere, Kale forced himself to find a topic to talk about. That I didn't expect you to know how to take care of people. Of course. You have to understand that you risked your life to save more than a group of supplies from the enemy base. The young girl stuck out her pink tongue. Perhaps it was because she remembered the scene of being tied up on Kale's back that night. Her face blushed a little. Also, I have a name, Lucy Jane. You can call me Lucy. Got it? Kale smiled and let Lucy gently and skillfully change the bandage on his wound. Soon, the doctor in charge, who was also the deputy director, rushed into the ward and checked Kale's injury. Doctor, how is he? Lucy asked nervously. He's fine. The doctor in charge smiled, pushed up his glasses and said to Kale, I really didn't expect this. Normal people would have to lie in bed for a month, but you've basically recovered in a week. In about 3 more days you can be officially discharged. 3 more days. Kale shrugged helplessly. In other people's eyes, his physique was at the top level, but in his eyes, it was really weak. The doctor in charge confirmed that the injury was fine and left the ward. Before he left, he said, Oh right. An officer asked me to inform him when you wake up. I already called him just now. He'll probably come here to visit soon. An officer came to visit? Kale scratched his head. It wasn't hard to guess. He knew less than 10 officers and only 1 or 2 were close. After a while, when the officer knocked on the door and walked in, Kale showed an expression that said he had guessed correctly, but he still pretended to be surprised and asked, Officer Joseph, why are you here? That's right, the officer who came to visit him was the combat instructor who let Kale draw a few green physique cards from the training base. Brat, why can't I come? Officer Joseph laughed and scolded without putting on airs, but when he saw that Lucy was also in the ward, he coughed and became serious. Oh, so there's a family member here? Chapter 20. Cut the crap. Sir, what are you doing here? I'm injured right now, so I can't practice with you. Kale also casually teased Joseph, who had a good relationship with him. Brat, you're really amazing. You've made our training base proud. Just like before, Commander Joseph changed the topic halfway through his words, and the original scolding turned into praise. I've heard about you. You went to the front line and became a corporal in just 3 days. You obtained important information about the enemy's camp, led a 100-men unit, and went deep into the enemy's camp alone. Commander Joseph gave a thumbs up as he spoke. You're really something. Do you know how important this counterattack was to our army? You destroyed a large enemy base, 3 medium-sized camps and 1 middle-sized camp. The situation at the front line was reversed. All the military units and even the whole country went crazy about this perfect counterattack. As the biggest contributor to this counterattack, you're a national hero and the idol of all the soldiers now. Because of this, it also caused a craze for young people to join the army. Compared to being promoted to corporal in 3 days, Kale really became famous in 1 battle. Don't praise me like that, I'll be proud. Kale chuckled and his young and handsome face was full of confidence. Captain America, who had the physique of a super soldier, was able to shine during World War II, and he had the more versatile and powerful card draw system. How difficult would it be for him to become an American hero? However, with this battle, his reputation in the army had greatly increased, which was a little beyond Cale's expectations. Cale blinked and asked Joseph with slight expectation, "Oh right, I made such a great contribution. Did the commander above give me a promotion or something?" "You little brat, you're already a corporal and you're still thinking about your military rank." Commander Joseph blew on his beard with dissatisfaction and said with a straight face, "Military merits have to be accumulated step by step. The most important thing is to defeat Germany and defend the country. However, you did make a great contribution in this counterattack, and your military rank was promoted a little bit." Cale heard the main point from these words and asked, "How much is a little bit?" "See for yourself." Commander Joseph didn't seem to want to say more. He took out a soldier's ID from his uniform pocket and threw it over. Cale quickly took it and opened it. It was indeed a new personal soldier's ID, and there was a black and white photo of him when he joined the army. Cale Duff, male, 22 years old, U.S. Navy lieutenant. It's actually a lieutenant? Kyle was shocked. This wasn't just a little bit, it was a huge jump. From corporal to lieutenant, there was a difference of 2 ranks. In other words, it was a jump of 3 ranks. Kyle had jumped 3 ranks when he was promoted from a private to a corporal, but that was still the rank of a corporal, the lowest military rank. And this time he had jumped to a genuine military officer position. "Commander Joseph, you seem to be a lieutenant yourself, right?" Cale looked at Joseph with a strange expression. He suddenly understood why the other was unhappy. "Are you happy now? You don't have to call me commander anymore." Joseph clenched his teeth. 2 weeks ago he was still a soldier under his command, and in the blink of an eye he was in the same position as him? "You dare to think about it?" Joseph grumbled like a resentful wife. "I used 10 years to slowly climb up to the rank of lieutenant, and you only used less than 10 days. You're really giving me face. Something's not right. No matter how many military merits I have, one battle shouldn't be enough for me to be promoted to lieutenant, right?" Cale asked doubtfully. There were many conspiracy theories floating in his mind. "That's why I said you encountered a once-in-a-100-years opportunity." Joseph sighed and explained, "Right now is the chaotic period of World War II. The country urgently needs to set an example to motivate the youth to join the army and increase the morale of the army. And you just happened to take the initiative to stand up, so the rank of lieutenant was naturally given to you." Joseph paused and said with a smile, "You're not like Captain America. You're not a fake title that relies on promoting movies and singing and dancing to show off. You're a hero's halo won by your real strength and achievements." "Captain America." Cale was shocked and asked urgently, "Is it Steve?" "Yes." Joseph took out a cutout New York Daily from his pocket and said indignantly, "After the success of the super soldier experiment, that kid's physique has indeed undergone amazing changes. But he didn't go to the battlefield. Instead, he went with those politicians every day to make some kind of military propaganda movie, and sang and danced to raise funds for debt prevention. He created a righteous reputation for himself as Captain America." Cale quickly took the newspaper and Lucy helped him spread it out. The two of them looked at it. On the front side of the newspaper, there was a black and white photo that occupied a large part of the paper. Inside was a tall and strong young man wearing a blue and white striped tights with a righteous face. "If you buy an E-Series debt prevention voucher, the soldiers on the battlefield will have one more bullet. Who is strong and brave enough to save the United States from the fire and water? Quickly follow the call of Captain America and join our battle." This kind of English banner was printed in bold above the headline and subheadline of the newspaper. "It's really Steve." Cale smiled. From the tall young man in the newspaper, he could vaguely see the weak shadow of the past. Captain America, Marvel's first artificial hero, finally appeared. Although at first, it appeared in this funny way of political propaganda. "Joseph, I shouldn't have a mission now, right? I haven't seen Steve for 2 weeks. I want to see him. I hope you can help me." Cale eagerly looked at Joseph and forcibly suppressed his inner sense of expectation. The ability card of the super soldier must be drawn as soon as possible. He had enough of being limited to the top level of human physique. "So it's like this." Joseph frowned. He personally was very disgusted with Steve, but since this request was made by Cale, he had no reason to refuse. Joseph could only nod and agree. "Let's do it this way. Steve is not in New York now, but he is traveling around the United States to promote. But in 2 days he will hold a publicity speech at the training base. I will also return. I will come in advance to pick you up. Okay, I can still afford to wait for these 2 days. Kale nodded in agreement, his hands quietly clenched into fists. Chapter 21. At noon in the first military hospital of the United States. Due to the time of war, there were many wounded officers and soldiers in the hospital, as well as many family members who came to visit. However, because it was a military hospital, everyone here was very well behaved and kept their voices low for fear of disturbing others. Kale wore a patient's exclusive uniform and walked through the hospital's lobby corridor. His young and handsome face immediately attracted the attention of many opposite sex. Thanks to the current information dissemination was not as crazy as in the 21st century, few people recognized that Kale was the biggest contributor to the recent counterattack campaign. In fact, Kale, the youngest lieutenant in the United States, was not even as famous as Steve, who was promoted as Captain America. In the face of the nurses who were constantly looking at him, Kale responded with a smile instead of a response. He stepped out of the hospital building and came to the green park outside. At this time the sun was shining brightly, the trees and grass were green, and the pool and fountain were shining brightly. It was very pleasing to the eye and was suitable for rest. Of course, Kyle wasn't the kind of person who would wait patiently. He took a few deep breaths of natural fresh air and began to warm up his muscles and bones. It was a set of formal military boxing. After a set, his bones were so comfortable that they were crackling like beans. His blood was flowing and his stiff and slow body looked much rosier. Comfortable. Kale exhaled a breath of hot air. Although his left shoulder that had not fully recovered was in pain, for him who was used to the combat environment, it was much more comfortable than lying on the hospital bed. He would go to the training base with Joseph tomorrow. He did not want to look so tired. Since he promised to walk in front of Steve, of course, everything would be perfect. Without knowing when, Kale had his own pride and principles. Oh yeah, I almost forgot about the loot from the counterattack campaign. After sweating, Kale sat on a chair in the park and closed his eyes as if he was resting. His mind quietly entered the card space. Compared to the previous campaign, the huge white space did not have a large number of messy white and green item cards. However, the loot this time was greater than any previous campaign. There were only 25 blue item cards that had not been categorized and stored. They were placed above the center of the card vortex. Every piece of paper was a cube with unlimited energy, which could give the modified guns and cannons astonishing destructive power. However, when Kale saw the blue-grade infinite energy cube, he had already figured out what to use it for. Rather than using these energy sources to expend on the guns and cannons, it would be better to use them as materials for the sacrificial card draw. 2 blue cards from the sacrificial draw. Even if I don't draw a card that exceeds the blue grade, at least there are 2 blue cards that can greatly improve my personal strength. Kyle was full of expectations as he suspended the 25 blue item cards in front of the mental incarnation. The difference between the lower limit and the upper limit of the sacrificial draw card was outrageous. Because there was the possibility of drawing anything, sometimes it was a huge loss and sometimes it could bring you unexpected gains. The stealth, blue ability card was the best product of the sacrificial draw card. If he didn't have the stealth ability, Kale wouldn't even be able to touch the entrance of the enemy base, let alone break into it alone. New York's goddess of victory bless me. Give me some luck. I must get something good. Kale felt as if he had returned to the lottery in the game in his previous life. He was excited and nervous as he first sacrificed 10 blue item cards. Sacrificial draw. You've sacrificed Gem Energy X10. Draw successful. Congratulations on obtaining the Blue Eagle. A blue card that was obviously a biology type appeared in front of Kale's eyes. The blue light on the card was dazzling, indicating that it was an extraordinary grade. It's my first time and I've already gotten a blue rare card? Kale didn't think that his luck would explode. He had already hit the jackpot to be able to draw a blue rare card. He quickly took the new card and checked it out. Blue Eagle. A strange flying creature that lives on a 10,000-meter cliff. Blue rare card. Its size is 3 times larger than a normal goshawk. Its wingspan is up to 10 meters. Its feathers are dark blue. Its vitality and defense are outstanding. It can withstand attacks from normal firearms. Its vision is up to 10,000 meters. It can emit a sonic attack. Its highest flying speed is Mach 4. Its carrying capacity is halved. A flying rare mount? Kale was stunned. If this was an online game, this would be a rare mount exclusive to rich people. In the world of Marvel, this Blue Eagle could already be classified as an alien monster. Its fastest speed can reach Mach 4. That's even faster than a fighter jet. Kale pondered. He really liked the Blue Eagle. Unfortunately, its special existence meant that he couldn't use it normally. He could guess that he was now sitting on the Blue Eagle and flying in the real world. Or he could directly summon the Blue Eagle to kill enemies. He would probably be killed by his own country's fighter jets or be captured and dissected by a group of biologists. In terms of practicality, the rare Blue Eagle was probably not as good as the green rare, poisonous hornet's nest. I'll leave it for now. It can still be useful in a specific environment in the future. After all, this is the first rare blue card in my life. Kale comforted himself. He listed the Blue Eagle in the space area for emergency use so that it would be convenient for emergency use. Next, it was the second time to sacrifice the card. After this time, the remaining 5 gem energy cards were not enough to draw any more. Please, give me a more practical card. Kyle didn't forget to pray. Now he understood that the most important thing about a card was its practicality. A card that was suitable for use at the moment was the best card. You have sacrificed Gem Energy X10. Draw successful. Congratulations on obtaining Vibranium Bracers. Vibranium, good stuff. Kale's nervous face was filled with excitement when he heard the name of the new card. After all, as long as it had the prefix of Vibranium, it couldn't be that bad. Vibranium was the top material in the world of Marvel. It originated from Wakanda, the hidden country of the Black Panther. In the current outside world, only the shield that Captain America would hold in the future was made of vibranium. Kale excitedly grabbed the new item card in his hand and looked at the attributes in detail. Vibranium bracers. Right arm bracers made of pure vibranium. Blue item card. It can perfectly accommodate the right arm of the holder and can easily offset all kinds of physical damage and the impact of firearms. Isn't this equivalent to the right-hand part of the Black Panther suit? It's just missing the claws. Kale was satisfied. Although it wasn't an ability card, it was the black technology equipment that he needed very much now. Chapter 22. The next morning. After eating breakfast at the hospital early, Kale changed into a brand new military uniform that Joseph had sent over. It also had a badge with the rank of lieutenant on it. Lucy paid more attention to Kale's appearance than he did himself. She tidied up the collar and sleeves of the uniform and carefully smoothed out the creases with her hands. I'm not going to a celebrity banquet. There's no need to be so gentlemanly, right? Kale teased. Lucy seemed to have something on her mind as she remained silent and didn't respond. What's wrong? Did someone bully you? Kale continued. Lucy seemed to have mustered up her courage as she nervously asked back. Brother Kale, are you going back to the battlefield with that big bearded officer later? The battlefield isn't that fast. The mission hasn't been given out yet. I'm just going to the recruit base where I trained before. Kale looked at her and said with a smile, What's wrong? Even if you're an officer, it's normal to go to the battlefield now. Then can I go with you? Lucy lowered her head and squeezed her little hands together. Kale said with a straight face, Lucy, do you think the battlefield is a fun place? Have you forgotten how you escaped? But my family died on the battlefield. My home is gone. If even you leave, then I'll. Lucy said as tears appeared in her beautiful big eyes. That's a problem. Kale rubbed his chin and thought for a bit before saying, Got it? My home was originally here in New York, but my parents died in the previous war. It's empty now. If you don't mind, you can live there first. He had seen his own files at the training base and knew that he was an orphan before he joined the army. He lived in a retro villa left behind by his deceased parents. The house keys were all kept in a depository in New York and could be taken out with an identification card. Live at your home? Lucy's eyes widened and her fair and pretty face was dyed pink. Kyle's words had another layer of meaning in her ears. Wasn't this cohabitation in advance? Although the other party wasn't often at home. You can stay as long as you want. Kale smiled and stroked Lucy's golden hair lovingly. For the time being, he didn't have any other thoughts about Lucy. He only treated her as a younger sister. Brother Kale, you're so good to me. Lucy's eyebrows were full of joy. She quickly stood on her tiptoes and kissed Kale's cheek. Then, like a frightened rabbit, she ran out of the room with a red face. This is really, a subtle feeling arose spontaneously. Kale touched the cheek that had been kissed and quickly threw this matter to the back of his mind. Now was not the time to talk about feelings. He must continue to become stronger, strong enough to face all the unexpected crises in this world. Accumulating military merits, promotion, and getting a certain amount of prestige and power and even wealth, there were still many things waiting for Cale to work hard. After being reborn as a marvel, if he only wanted to be an ordinary person, it would be a waste of the ability to draw cards given by God. Cale had his own blueprint for life and was waiting to add color to it. Around 8 o'clock in the morning, Joseph personally drove the Jeep to pick up Cale and take him to the military airport. Cale said goodbye to Lucy in New York and then boarded the helicopter with Joseph and returned to the initial training base. At this time, on the other side of the training base, the military set up a speech stage in the open space of the square. Steve, as Captain America, was going to give a speech, but there were political factors. The commander of the base issued an order early on to force all the soldiers in the training camp to listen to the speech on the square on time. Whoever did not go would be expelled from the military. What was intriguing was that except for the soldiers, no officers attended the speech. Because not only the soldiers but all the officers sneered at Steve, who had never been to the battlefield but claimed to be Captain America. It was conceivable that Steve, wearing a tights with the United States logo, was bound to be strongly resisted by the soldiers. In fact, this was indeed the case. "Are you ready to go with me to fix Hitler?" Steve stood on the podium, facing the silence of the audience. He wanted to warm the atmosphere and said to the hundreds of soldiers below, "Well, are there any volunteers?" "Nonsense. What are we doing here if there are no volunteers?" A soldier below the stage shouted impatiently, and suddenly all the soldiers sitting on the square roared with laughter. "We want to see the girls dance." In the face of the laughter of the soldiers, Steve responded awkwardly, "I think they will only sing one song later, so I'll think about what to do with the extra time." "Get out of here. Little fairy, you should dance in boots." The soldiers below the stage did not give him any face at all and became more and more noisy. Some soldiers began to throw the fruit or water bottles in their hands directly on the stage. Carter at the back of the stage clenched her fists and wanted to help Steve out, but there was no way. "Please don't be like this, I used to be a training soldier here." Steve had no choice but to use the decorative props in his hand as a shield to block the debris that was constantly thrown under the stage. "What are you doing?" A cold and powerful voice suddenly came from the back of the square. Suddenly, all the soldiers on the square looked back in surprise. They saw a young man in a military uniform standing behind the soldiers at some point in time. He had a faint majestic aura, and his sharp and cold eyes looked at the soldiers. "It's Lieutenant, sir." The soldier who was about to refute noticed the military rank symbol on the young man's chest and swallowed his saliva in disbelief. "Such a young lieutenant officer? Why haven't I heard of him? He shouldn't be older than us, right?" In the nervous whispers of many soldiers, some soldiers seemed to have recognized the young man's identity and said loudly with a complicated expression, "It's Cale, Lieutenant Cale." "Lieutenant Cale?" Many of the recruits were slightly stunned, and their eyes became fanatical when they looked at the young officer again. Hey, is it really him?" "Nonsense. Such a young lieutenant, who else could it be other than Cale?" "Oh my God. American hero, he's my idol." "Who isn't? I joined the army because of his deeds." The soldiers on the square were so excited that they could not speak. In the end, someone took the lead and shouted, "Stand up and salute." Suddenly, hundreds of soldiers stood up in unison and turned to salute the young man. "Good morning, sir." "Thank you for your hard work, sir." In the face of their worship, Cale at the back responded coldly, "No need to salute, I was just one of you 2 weeks ago. But is this how you treat my brother? Is this the only quality of a soldier?" The soldiers looked at each other and finally gritted their teeth. They collectively reacted quickly and turned around again, bowing and apologizing to Steve on the stage. "Sorry." Steve on the stage did not say anything. He looked at the cold young man standing behind the soldiers, and his heart was really excited and ashamed. He suddenly remembered the sunset scene after Cale won the shooting competition at the training base. Chapter 23. Cale's arrival instantly became the focus of the training base. The youngest lieutenant officer, the American hero, these titles are enough to make every recruit relish and upgrade it to a hot topic to chat about. And now, the rumored real person is here, more attractive than idols or dancers. Steve took the opportunity to get away, retreated to the backstage, and replaced a group of dancers in short skirts to smooth things over. However, the soldiers in the square were still in high spirits and still couldn't stop, looking around trying to find Cale's figure that had disappeared from the field. At this moment, backstage of the speech stage. "Steve." "Cale." The two handsome young men ignored the strange eyes of the backstage staff and laughed and hugged each other, which was a unique intimate action of the two. Kale was still smiling, while Steve's excited face was overflowing with joy, happy like a child. Don't use so much force, the gunshot wound on my left shoulder hasn't completely healed. Kale laughed and looked at the tall and powerful Steve in front of him, stretched out his fist and punched his strong chest and said with emotion, I didn't expect you to be much taller than before, even taller than me. He was only 180 centimeters, while Steve was now 188 centimeters, taller by half a head. This is the effect of the super soldier serum. I'm much stronger than I look now. Steve did not hide the slightest. Sadness appeared on his righteous face and said regretfully, unfortunately the professor was shot by a spy of the Hydra organization, and the only super soldier serum sample was robbed and destroyed, otherwise, it's okay. Kale shrugged and said indifferently, even if there is no super soldier serum I don't care. After all I still have the card draw. Kale secretly said in his heart. Right. Kale, what happened to your right hand? Steve's surprised eyes fell on Kale's right hand. The military uniform was a long-sleeved coat, but Kale's right hand and palm were now tightly wrapped in white bandages. Kale lifted his tightly wrapped vibranium arm and casually made an excuse. This is a little bruise from the previous battle. Surprise counterattack battle. Steve's eyes lit up and he said excitedly, I've heard about your record. You must tell me about the scene at that time. For Steve, a patriot war maniac full of righteous beliefs, has not been on the battlefield with real guns and bullets, which really stifled him. This is also what Kale wants, so he readily agreed. No problem, let's find a place to have lunch. After that, Kale's gaze shifted to Carter behind Steve. The mature woman who always maintained her cool, was like a rose with thorns, with an aura that kept strangers away. Kale teased, Agent Carter is also here. That's great, let's go have lunch together. I've said a long time ago that I want to repay you. Carter originally wanted to coldly refuse, but for some reason she hesitated and said, Then let's go. Is that a yes? We're brothers catching up and you're really going? Kale was a little confused for a moment. He thought that someone as cold as Carter would definitely refuse. But since it was already like this, he could only let nature take its course. 10 minutes later in the cafeteria of the training base. At the table in the middle area, Kale sat on one side, while Steve and Carter sat side by side on the other side. The atmosphere was strange for the three of them to have a meal. Big brother Kale, are we eating here? Steve looked at the hodgepodge on his plate hesitantly. It wasn't that he disliked it, but he was thinking about the person next to him. Kale was probably the only one who dared to invite Carter to the soldiers' cafeteria for lunch. You know, the training base here is close to the frontline area of the Italian territory. If you want to eat in a cafeteria, even if you take a helicopter, you can only rush there for dinner. Kale smiled and said, Why didn't you eat there often before? I'm fine, but... Steve's eyes hinted at Carter, who was silent next to him. All right. Chef, add a big drumstick for our beautiful Carter. Kale directly shouted at the cafeteria chef. Steve, Carter was also silent for a while before she began to eat the hodgepodge lunch on her plate with a spoon. Steve had just eaten a few mouthfuls when he couldn't help but say, Kale, tell me about the counterattack campaign. I heard that due to the wrong information, you were facing the large German base with 100 people. That's right. At that time, as a newly promoted corporal, I and another sergeant led 100 people and accepted the surprise attack mission. Kale began to talk about the situation of the campaign, but his mind was secretly locked onto Steve, who was right in front of him. In just an instant, only Kale could see that hundreds of cards of different colors appeared from the back of Steve's head and quickly floated and rotated around him. Car driving proficiency, English proficiency, military boxing proficiency, pistol proficiency, sniper proficiency, true shield strike proficiency. White and green cards were densely packed into Kale's vision. Compared to 2 weeks ago when he only had the initial 4 white ability cards, Steve had also achieved the same level of metamorphosis now. Of course, the number of cards itself wasn't the main point. Kale had as many white and green ability cards as he wanted. Kale's gaze quickly fell on Steve's head. There was an unparalleled dark blue ability card floating there, emitting light that easily crushed the rest of the hundreds of ability cards. Super Soldier. Obtain the perfect physique that humans can achieve. Rare blue ability card. A qualitative change triggered from the human body's genes. Increase the physique to the theoretical threshold of perfection for humans, greatly slowing down the aging of the body, and strengthening the immune system, low-level self-healing and resistance to attacks. Have the perfect physique of the golden ratio, superb physical fitness, speed, reaction, and intelligence that normal humans can't achieve. Current status. Can be drawn. Do you wish to draw? This is the rare blue physique type ability card. Kale's heart surged with uncontrollable excitement. The skill type, potential ability card, compared to this type of card, was immediately superior. Without hesitation, Kale directly chose to draw. But in the next moment, an unprecedented warning suddenly sounded in his mind. Warning. This card will last for half an hour. Warning. Rare blue ability card can only be drawn once. Warning. Once drawn, it will completely transform the card owner's physique. It can't be changed. Kale's expression changed. The 3 warning messages for drawing cards were carved into his mind like a knife, deeply etched in his heart. Kale, what's wrong with you? Steve saw that Kale had suddenly stopped and couldn't help but ask worriedly. Carter also stared at Kale in surprise. Nothing, I just suddenly remembered the difficult situation of the battle. Kale shook his head and continued to verbally describe the battle scene that hadn't been completed. He didn't think too much and quickly made a choice. Chapter 24. The Super Soldier ability was a must-have. Even if there was a huge restriction, Kale had no reason to give up on drawing. And this restriction only applied to blue rare ability cards. Blue ability cards without rare attributes could still be drawn. However, at the current stage in the world of Marvel, there weren't that many people with super green ability cards and above for him to draw. It was just half an hour of continuous card drawing time. Kale spent a lot of effort to explain the last counterattack to Steve and Carter in detail. Of course. Sneak, ability card, hound creature card, gem energy, and so on were all omitted. That's how I snuck into the armory of the large base. Who would have thought that I would run into the enemy commander in the basement of the armory? After killing him, I planted a time bomb in the armory. What happened next was simple. I just needed to escape the pursuit of the German soldiers and leave the warehouse to detonate the bomb. Once the base's internal defense mechanism fell, it would be difficult for them to stop the surprise attack of our 100-man army. In order to delay the card drawing time, Kale finished telling the story. He was a little thirsty as he drank some water. Only then did he realize that Steve and Carter were still immersed in the description of the battle just now. Sneaking in alone and destroying the enemy base's defense system with your own strength. That's really exciting. Steve praised as a trace of envy flashed in his eyes. This was the experience that he had been yearning for. Sneaking into the base alone, you really dared to do it. You don't want to live anymore. Carter concluded coldly. I don't know if you've heard of this saying. If you don't have passion, then your life will be bleak. Kale smiled confidently and looked at the 2 people in front of him. He said with certainty, even if I were given another chance to start over, I would still bet my life on the side of rewards and risks. Instead of being the stars that serve as a foil to the moon, it's better to choose to fly across the universe and challenge the sun with light and heat. I don't care what series protagonist you are, I don't care what invincible villain you are. If you block my path, then I'll beat you. As long as I'm here, Marvel has no main characters. This was Kale's life creed in this world. No one could make him submit. Looking at the man whose conviction and aura were incomparably strong, Carter's beautiful eyes couldn't help but reveal a strange emotion. Kale, you're right. Life should be so exciting. Steve quietly clenched his fists as if he had been injected with chicken blood. He was so excited that he could not wait to go to the front line and find a base to fight. Don't worry, gold will always shine. Steve, your strength is genuine. You are absolutely qualified to fight alongside me. I have no doubt about that, Kale said with a smile. After all, as one of the representative heroes of Marvel, Steve, with a shield, was almost equal to anyone. That's right. Carter, you're so close to Steve. Are you too? Kale winked playfully. Carter glanced at him coldly. It's just a job to collect follow-up information on the super soldier. Exactly. Kale, don't talk nonsense. Steve hurriedly waved his hand to clarify. You two are a good match. Are you sure you don't want to think about it? Kale continued. Clang. The spoon was thrown on the iron plate. Carter could not help but stand up from her seat and throw out a sentence, I'm done. Then she walked towards the door of the cafeteria. Steve sighed and complained, Kale, you're too straightforward. I'm creating an opportunity for you. Kale patted him on the shoulder as if for his own good. He motioned to the door. Are you sure you don't want to chase after her? Oh, I got it. I'll find you in the afternoon. After being modified by the super soldier serum, Steve's brain was a lot sharper. He reacted quickly and nodded. Then he chased after Carter. After the two left, Cale breathed a sigh of relief. His hand pressed tightly on his chest. His forehead was sweating profusely. Super Soldier, drawn. This rare blue ability card, as soon as it was stored in the card space, occupied the dominant position right above all the cards. At the same time, Cale felt a stabbing pain from the inside out. It made him feel as if he was on a barbecue grill repeatedly. He knew that the physique type ability card, Super Soldier, had begun to completely modify his genes and physique. I have to find a place to complete the genetic transformation of my physique, Cale muttered to himself. Soon he thought of a safe and reliable place. At the training base in the public shower room. As the performance on the stage had not yet ended, there was no one in the shower room at this time. Entering a separate room, Cale took off his clothes and equipment. He turned on the shower and let the cold water pour down from the top of his head. It washed his strong body with various scars. Even so, the stabbing pain and heat in his body were getting stronger. Even his bones were creaking. Something in his body was breaking, tearing, and then forcefully remodeling. Ugh. Cale's eyes were bloodshot. He materialized the Nepalese army knife and used it as a stress reliever. He bit it hard between his teeth to prevent himself from crying out due to the pain. If there were outsiders around, they would definitely be able to see that Cale's naked body was expanding little by little. It was also shrinking little by little. It was as if it was adjusting to the most ideal appearance. The blue veins were moving and protruding. His muscles were becoming stronger and stronger after the expansion and contraction. The mutation lasted for 3 minutes. Phew. Cale opened his mouth. The army knife fell directly to the ground. There was a row of clear teeth marks on the body of the army knife made of stainless steel. His chest muscles were still beating rapidly, but they had already calmed down. His skin was emitting heat. The wounds and scars that originally existed on it seemed to have been washed away by water. There were no traces of the past left. The transformation was a success. Cale was clearly aware of this because he could feel that his body was filled with a powerful strength that he could not hold in the past. Although the Super Soldier is the most perfect physique that a human can have, I can't be considered a human now, Cale said to himself. Now, regardless of his age, vitality, the natural aging of his cells, physical strength, learning, memory and thinking speed, they were all not in the first class of the human definition. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was a humanoid monster. Finally, I have a trump card that can allow me to stand firm in this world. Cale also breathed a sigh of relief. He had relieved a lot of pressure. Although he had the ability to draw cards before, he was still within the definition of a human. He could easily die if he was hit by a bullet. Now, even if he was hit by a bullet, it would only constitute a minor injury. It would not be a life-threatening serious injury. Therefore, the Super Soldier ability was a big step in the growth of Cale's strength. It was also an indispensable step. After Cale took a shower, he put on his military uniform. Only then did he notice that he had grown a little taller. He was almost 185 centimeters. His physique and abdominal muscles were also a lot stronger. They stretched the clothes and looked more intimidating. Indeed, the poor relied on mutation. Chapter 25. Cale came out of the shower room and found that the sky outside had changed. The sky was covered with dark clouds and it was drizzling. The rain washed the aisle of the training base and made it full of potholes. The scene of this place, coupled with the current timeline, was a bit familiar. Cale was taking shelter from the rain and pondering when he saw a woman hurrying towards him with an umbrella in the rain. She looked around as if she was looking for someone. When he saw the cold face of the person, he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, "Carter?" Cale. Carter saw Cale standing under the eaves of the shower room. She didn't care about the wet ground and approached him quickly. "Why aren't you with Steve? What are you doing here in the men's shower room?" Cale was surprised and seemed to have guessed something. He joked, "You don't really like to see the perfect body of a man, do you?" After all, the last time he was a soldier in the training base, Carter broke into the dormitory once. At that time, Cale happened to be taking a shower. However, Carter didn't even refute this time. She said anxiously, "Cale, I came here specifically to find you. Please go and persuade Steve. You're the only one who can persuade him now." What are you talking about?" Cale scratched his head in confusion. "I'll tell you on the way. If you don't go now, it'll be too late." Carter grabbed Cale's hand and took him into the rain outside, near the military camp tent area. "You mean?" In the front-line war zone of Austria, the soldiers of the 107th Regiment were raided by the Germans. Only a small number of people escaped back here. And among those missing soldiers there's a sergeant named Bucky Barnes? After listening to Carter's brief message, Cale suddenly knew why she was so anxious. Bucky Barnes. Steve's best friend before he became a soldier, and the Winter Soldier controlled by Hydra in the future. For his sake, Steve later completely fell out with Iron Man and fought him. Now that he knew that something had happened to Bucky and that the place of the accident was not far away, Steve would definitely risk his life to save him. Carter. Are you trying to persuade me to stop Steve from going? Cale asked. Carter answered affirmatively, of course. Let's not talk about whether the soldiers who were attacked were still alive. Right now there wasn't a large force here so they could launch a rescue operation. It's too dangerous for him to cross Europe's most dangerous war zone and penetrate deep into the enemy's rear factory alone. I understand. Cale smiled and didn't say anything. This made Carter frown slightly. She had a bad premonition. However, at that moment, the only person who could stop Steve's persistent actions was Cale. The two came to the barracks area where the tents for the propaganda staff lived. Steve was still wearing the blue and white striped American Star tights and a rainproof Nike jacket. He was preparing to change the spare tire in a Jeep military vehicle. He looked like he was going to set off alone. When Carter came back, Steve hurriedly wanted to say something, but when he saw Cale behind her, his face suddenly became unnatural. Cale, are you here to persuade me too? I know it's risky, but if I have the ability and don't do it, I will feel guilty for the rest of my life. I haven't said anything yet. How do you know I'm here to persuade you? Cale shrugged and helped Steve throw the second spare tire into the back of the car. Steve patted Cale's shoulder in surprise, and the two looked at each other and smiled. There was no need to say anything between men. They could read each other's thoughts with just one action. Cale, you? Carter looked at him in disbelief. Wasn't this more of a hindrance than a help? I'll go with him. That shouldn't be a problem, right? It's much safer with two people, Cale said confidently. Carter looked at Steve, then looked at Cale and said bitterly, don't you understand? This is completely not something that one or two people can do. What would happen when a hothead with a clear goal met another madman who clapped his hands to encourage him? In less than half a minute, Carter announced that she had completely failed to stop them. For the sake of the two of them, she had to secretly use the resources in her hands. 10 minutes later, a plane took off in the thunderstorm, taking advantage of the darkness and rain to go deep into the European war zone. In the plane cabin, Steve and Cale sat on one side and Carter sat on the other side, explaining the situation to them. The Hydra military camp is in Clausburg, between two mountains like a factory. I'll try to get the plane as close to the entrance as possible. Stark is the best pilot I've ever seen. Only he dares to take off in this thunderstorm. When Carter said this in the pilot's seat, a man dressed like a gentleman about 30 years old, casually waved his hand behind him. Howard Stark, the founder of Stark Industries, and also the father of Iron Man. Cale's eyes lit up slightly. He had wanted to meet this legendary figure in the world of Marvel for a long time. He greeted him and said, "Are you Howard from the Scientific Strategy Bureau? I've seen your scientific inventions at the Natural History Exhibition. They're all works of genius." "Lieutenant Cale," Howard replied politely, "I've heard about you a long time ago. You rejected the Super Soldier Project experiment, the Solo War Maniac, and the title of American Hero. If there's a chance, I can treat you to cheese hot pot when we go back. Of course, it would be even better if Agent Carter came along." "Then it's a deal," Cale said with a smile. He didn't care about the upcoming danger, as if he was sure that he could return safely and triumphantly. With some cards in hand, he really wanted to have a good relationship with Howard. "Attention, we've entered the enemy-occupied area." Howard gave a rare serious warning and quickly operated the instrument to avoid gunfire. The plane suddenly caused a violent tremor. Through the window they could clearly see the lightning flashing in the sky outside. In the dark wilderness below, the muzzle flames of the enemy constantly lit up. Natural and man-made attacks were seriously affecting the flight of the plane. "It's too dangerous. Steve and I will go down from here. You guys go back immediately." Cale made a judgment and opened the cabin of the plane. The night wind from 100 meters above suddenly rushed in and opened the windbreaker on his body. "This is also very close to the enemy's factory." Steve nodded and stood side by side with Cale at the hatch. "Steve." Carter stopped him and said slowly, "Please come back alive." "Don't worry." Steve comforted her and jumped down first. "With me here, Steve will be fine. When we come back, I'll treat you to a real feast." Cale waved his hand and followed Steve down. In just a few seconds, the two quickly fell and disappeared in the night rain. Not just Steve, please come back too, Kale. That you're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.